budget. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein?
Here.
Alder Rademacher?
Here.
Alder Wood?
Here.
Alder Moore?
Here.
Alder Holmquist?
Here.
Alder DePula?
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we are back to hear more departmental presentations, and first up is Diane from the Senior Center, and this is on page 129. Diane, whenever you want to start.
Okay. So looking at the 2025 budget, the having the referendum pass is allowing us to do the recommended per line increases on the budget, so we appreciate that. And the one other line item that I wanted to discuss was the RSVP rides. We had decreased this in past years because the ridership was down, and actually that's been increasing again. So just to keep a more realistic budget, the proposal through RSVP is actually an 18% increase. It's still a very small line item. It's $7,200, but that would be a little bit larger increase. In my description here, it says, as of June of 2024, the ride numbers had surpassed all of the rides that we had given in 2023. So we could see the writing on the wall that the rides are increasing. So this would just get us shored up better for the next budget in 2025. We are noticing as we start to do 2025 program planning that speakers that we used to get for pretty reasonable rates are much more expensive than they used to be. So just like everything else going up, I appreciate the extra expenses, the extra funding for our program expenses that'll allow us to bring some quality programs to the Senior Center. Any questions on those line items or other things going on at the Senior Center?
Anyone have questions? Teresa, did you have something?
I only have a question, Diane. I just was hoping that you could say a few words about the RSVP service.
Oh, sure. So RSVP is Retired Senior Volunteer Program. So we contract with this organization. They will match seniors who need rides with volunteers who will provide rides. When we talked about doing cuts, one of the options would have been to cut this program. But we just would have taken it on ourselves. So it takes a lot of time to try to find volunteers that can transport people from point A to point B, and especially people who have, this program is specifically for medical rides because we prioritize that.
Okay.
So it could be dialysis or doctor's appointments. Having a volunteer is sometimes a nice touch because they can just wait and you don't have to call a cab or I don't know when I'm going to be done. So this program is really great. They do like a small reimbursement stipend for the volunteer and they provide the insurance for them. So it's a really reasonable program when you think about how much we spend on it to coordinate a number of rides for our seniors.
And how many riders did you say? I should say how many rides. Do you have that number versus how many riders?
I didn't put it in numbers, but
Okay.
the percentage I know was like doubled from 2023 to 2024.
Yeah.
But I could look that up and send it to you tomorrow.
Only if, no, it's, I just thought you might have it handy. That's fine.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Diane?
One question for Doris.
Doug? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you to do kind of a similar review of the contracted senior services line, since that's one of the largest in there. And in particular, the benefit of the increased funding.
For the contracted senior services specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is probably a good reminder. Our contracted senior services is actually paying for people. We don't put it under personnel in this budget, but we contract with Newbridge to provide case management for seniors in this community. Other senior centers in Dane County have case management in-house. So the city would be hiring 1, 2, or people to provide case management for older adults. The city many years ago decided not to do that. So we contract with Newbridge to provide case management. So this is helping seniors with housing concerns, finances, if they need extra help in the house, could be elder abuse issues, that sort of thing. So just like all of us, keeping them compensated appropriately is really essential. And if you've been paying attention to the news, Newbridge has kind of been taking a cut from their, so they contract with Madison as well. So Madison is trying to reallocate some of their funds. But Rick and I were just in a meeting with them, and they assure us, because of the funding that we provide to them, our seniors in Monona will be taken care of for case management and home chore coordination. So these pay for salary increases, benefit increases for our case managers.
Yeah, that's my recollection is that in the past that has been an issue, that the level of compensation and then being able to retain
Yeah.
employees. So-
Yep. So this line item we usually treat like non-personnel. So we're usually giving it a very small increase. So it's been challenging over the years. And I think senior committee and this council has been pretty supportive. When we can, we would give them a little extra, just so that they can compensate the case managers better. I still think that they have challenges as they go on and get their master's degrees. Sometimes they're on to other jobs, but any nonprofit deals with that when they provide case management.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So even though Madison's referendum passed, they're still trying to make some changes with
Yes.
the New Ridge contract?
Yeah, they're not as drastic.
Okay.
They're still in the mix of trying to get some of the funding back, but a committee has to reallocate those funds, so some might go to Newbridge and they might go to another organization. So they're still waiting, but I think it'll help. The biggest cut for them would be case management. Other programs, and their budget's very complicated, are completely funded by Dane County. So like their mental health assistance was all Dane County funded. That wouldn't change. And then they also have some programming specifically for a more diverse population, and that's all Dane County funded, so that would remain.
Okay.
So,
Mark, did you have something to?
Oh, just more a question for Diane. I mean, with Madison Metro starting here fairly soon, and with their paratransit, do you think, I mean, we'll figure it out the first year, do you think RSVP will be as used as much? Or do you think with the new route system and where they can go, especially with the hospitals and like that more, do you think that will have an effect?
well, it's hard to tell. Certainly in the beginning, I think people are going to like RSVP because it's one person who gets them in the car and gets them to their appointments. Until seniors learn that system, it's just going to take a really long time. If they don't qualify for paratransit, they need to literally get on a city bus. So depending on where their clinics are. So that's, I guess, yet to be seen. But Madison uses Madison Transit,
Right.
plus they use RSVP. So I do still think it's a needed and used service.
Neil?
Just, I will selfishly put a plug in for that program. My dad's a volunteer driver in Stoughton for that program. And it really is, I mean, the door-to-door service, and the seniors really do appreciate it. And it's, I mean, the fact that they can wait, I mean, even if it's a 4-hour appointment, or, I mean, some of these can take, they know the ride will be there when they're done, whenever it's done. And it is it's a great, really a great program. So seniors, I'm sure, will still want to use that when they can.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good. Anyone else? Nancy?
Yeah, so Diane, I don't know if you watched our COW meeting from Tuesday, but I am asking everybody, we talked about, prior to the referendum, we talked about the staff identifying cuts in the event that the referendum didn't pass. So, and obviously the referendum did pass, but I'm wondering if you had, as you were looking at potential cuts in your department, just what were they? What were you considering for cuts?
Because I don't think I can run that center without my staff.
Yes.
I actually went back to Neil and Mark, and I would have eliminated my entire program budget. Like, give me no money for programming. We can still do things for free and we can function, but without my staff, like, we just can't do anything. So So we re-looked at things, and I would have completely eliminated all professional development, all programming dollars, which isn't a lot.
Right.
My line items are pretty tiny.
Exactly.
But anything but my staff. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Diane? Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Diane.
Will, I think you are up next. Community media, which is 103.
Till you get there. All right. So I guess first off, I'll look at, just a reminder like I always do, when we look at the revenues, these revenues under franchise fees, again, that's from the cable franchise fees that we get through TDS, Spectrum, and a little bit still from AT&T, and that is the 4% of their revenue in this particular municipality. Each municipality in Wisconsin has the same setup. It's a state-run. The other revenue then comes from the school district with our partnership agreement with the school district. And the state aid is what used to be the franchise fees was 5%, is now 4%, and the state aid is making up that 1% that we lost of $24,000. So that's where the revenue is coming from for this department.
Just, you know, some of the state aid, as you can see, even beyond 2021, before the change, it's always going to be locked in at that dollar amount until there's any other changes to the state. As franchise fees, I don't know if you noticed, the revenue is going down. You know, 23 was 92. This year we're expecting probably 88. So that was reduced by $8,000 because that revenue stream is starting to die down. More people are going to online streaming systems. Younger people aren't really getting the systems because they do online streaming systems. So it is having an impact on the budget.
Absolutely. Well, and to that end, I appreciate you bringing that up. So what we've tried to do over the years, and this year was an exceptionally good year, we're trying to get in additional revenue sources because we know that those franchise fees are dwindling. So as of to date, with some sponsorship that we're doing through the radio station and audio-video services and some video production work we're doing with the Monona Eastside Business Alliance, we've brought in an additional revenue of just over $20,000 this year. So we're making that up from the franchise fees and then some. This didn't make it on. I suppose if we're this successful as years go on, I guess we'll add that revenue on, but would be a never too much of a guarantee each year. But we are trying to expand our sources of income, knowing that the franchise fees most likely will not go up and will only slowly go down. If we look at the budget itself, there really is no big changes. Everything has been some adjustments for inflation. Some of the subscriptions for the radio station streaming service and internet service has increased a little bit more than you'd like. But all in all, everything has stayed pretty steady as far as the operational expenses and the non-personnel expenses. I'm happy to talk about anything specific.
We did add in there for overtime. So you gotta explain how that's working, so why we added it.
Yeah, so right now we do have a number of, at least our full-time employee goes over quite a bit on their overtime, and so they're of course using comp time, and so it's my understanding we're putting that in place as a way to give us some leeway with the
Well, what ended up
overtime?
happening is right now he has no overtime budget, so they have to use comp time. So a lot of times he'll work, have 8 hours of comp time or 10 hours each he'll grab per week. So, he's working overtime, so he's not less doing work in the office.
Right.
So it's the efficiency issue we're running into. Like, he's not around as much because he has to take comp time if he works on the weekends. So,
Right.
that's kind of the reason why that was put in there.
And that's probably similar to what you hear in other departments where end up actually not working 40 hours because they're going over and then they're getting comped out at a different rate. And so we're actually losing productivity that way by
So
not.
we'll be paying them instead of comp time.
So, right, yeah, when we can, yep, and we'll have to kind of gauge that throughout the year, whether or not we can do that all the time or maybe just on some occasions, or that'll be a work in progress this year, since it's the first time we've kind of obviously started this.
Nancy?
So, can you just share a little bit more? I'm seeing under TV, I'm seeing equipment. Is that, thought we had some equipment
Yeah,
for
so it's
5,000. I thought we had equipment in the capital budget.
It's minor equipment that adds up. It's like
Okay.
a piece that, it's
And
almost
can
like
you just give us
repair-
a sense of what that equipment is?
It's almost like a repair and maintenance account type situation, like something breaks in here, this is where that would go in that account. So there's really not like it's allocated for something. It really should be changed, I guess, to repair and maintenance for the equipment. Because that's what ends up happening. Their equipment falls apart, they gotta replace a piece or buy something new that's not part of the original capital budget. So that's what,
Because you do have a studio maintenance line item in there that's over 5,000 too, so I'm just curious.
And that's actually, yep, and that's studio maintenance, which is actually the radio, at least for the radio, it's a radio automation service agreement. And then
Well, I was
for
looking at the TV.
studio maintenance on TV side, it's
Yeah.
Adobe software subscriptions, and it's the Monona Go app service fees,
Okay,
which adds up pretty quick.
okay.
The subscription fees are constantly rising and getting more ubiquitous across all sorts of equipment and software.
That sounds very familiar, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You've seen a lot of that.
so then also, so those two line items that I was looking at were maintenance and equipment under TV. When I get to radio, I know you mentioned streaming services, but, that bumped from, what, 6,900 this year to 97 in '25. Are they just all increasing their rate so much? Are we adding streaming services, or?
so that was on me last year.
Okay.
I did not add in a service fee
Okay.
that we used for the radio, that we can then call the company and they help us out. And
Okay.
I just missed that last budget and totally
Okay.
missed like $1,500 last budget. What you're also seeing is that our internet has gone up because we went out of our 2-year, like we switched to TDS, and then we had that 2-year, hey, look at how low it is, and then all of a sudden, boom, it
Been there, done that. I know
jacked
that. I know
up,
that
jacked up
routine.
that year.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you're seeing a little bit of that, as well as streaming subscription services going up as well.
Okay. And then my last question, sorry, is just the same question that I asked Diane, which is, when we were looking at the potential of not having the referendum pass, what kinds of cuts were you thinking about in your budget?
Yeah, that was tough. I immediately looking at what are the services we could look at and say, are these essential services?
Right.
And of course, our relationship and agreement with the school district makes it a little difficult to cut certain things, because we
Yeah.
do have an obligation. So it was mostly, well, entirely with the radio. Probably would have just been on and just running music, and that's about it, not streaming on the internet.
Okay.
And nobody really working at the radio station, just having it on, and probably eventually just nobody listened because it's the same songs and same things, just rotating.
Right.
It was kind of a coordinator that kind of helps the part-time person.
Yeah,
And
I
that would
mean-
have affected, like he
It
said,
certainly would have been, yeah, I mean,
volunteers,
it's,
because he coordinates the volunteers that put the programs on, and that person would have been the person we were looking at.
yeah, I mean, at a bigger scale, right, all the volunteers, there wouldn't have been anybody at the station doing anything. The volunteers wouldn't really have anything to do because we wouldn't have anybody to coordinate their programming and help them. So, that would have been a big hit for the radio station, for sure.
Patrick?
Yeah, this is kind of a question for Neil. Can we look at increasing licensing fees for telecom companies and whatnot that use our right-of-way?
We
And then
have-
use that money to use for media?
Yeah, certainly we'll defer to Director Stefani on this one a little bit. We just had a conversation about this actually at staff meeting in terms of being able to do that. There are, while there's some short-term, maybe appears that there's some financial advantages to doing that. The downside in terms of licensing and then following up on permitting and inspections and making sure things are restored, and there's kind of a bigger issue in terms of following up and maintaining, like, by simply limiting and not allowing certain uses to occur in the right of way, we don't have to worry about going back and monitoring restoration and other things with staff. So I think, and Director, correct me if I misspeak on this, I think they've evaluated what the revenues benefits would be versus the impacts to staff and Brad and having to go back out and continually inspect and try to make sure things, it just really hasn't proven to be worth it at this
Yeah.
point.
As far as the dollar amount, that's something we could always look at, but is what it usually is, it's in the general fund, those fees. And why it's in the general fund is it's mainly the public works employees that have to go out, like you said, to monitor all that stuff. And that's why it goes in there, not the cable fund. So they're the ones that are doing, like he said, all the monitoring and doing, issuing the permits and making sure they're following through and they're doing everything correctly. So that's why we have it in there.
And I think just to be clear, and to Director Nimmo's point of the fact that, you know, the internet companies don't pay those franchise fees. So in terms of, they're in the middle, they're doing burial and taking up all kinds of activity. You see them all over the place, still running, boring and drying cable all over the place. Those guys aren't, those people using that infrastructure are not contributing to that franchise fee.
Well, is there a movement with municipalities to capture revenue from that? Like, I know that some cities are lobbying to be able to charge, like on, like, apparently you can't do it if you're bundling services, right? So you can't do it on the telecom or the broadband part if it's bundled with TV services or phone or whatever, but if it's a household that's simply using the broadband and their streaming services and whatnot, apparently I guess there's a way that you can do that, or at least there's a potential way to do that, but I think that might fall under, you know, whoever does our association that does the lobbying, probably we need to participate in order to get that happening.
Yeah,
at
and
the
I do
state
believe,
level.
Alder, that that's probably more regulated at the state level in terms of that access on that. So certainly we would be more than happy to take the revenue if they were able to do that. But yeah, then unfortunately, I don't think there's anything, you know,
Actually, when you think about like Sling and YouTube TV and all these things are taking the place of cable.
Right.
I mean, it's essentially the same thing, so, okay.
Yeah, it is unfortunately. We did have, I know, like 2023, we did collect about 75,000. And when TDS went in, it was well over 100,000. So we did at those times increase our rates pretty high to start trying to capture that at the time. But yeah, it's,
But now they're done, right? Pretty
well,
much.
there's, I think Dan said there might be a couple more coming in, smaller things, but I think the big ones
yeah.
are done.
Will, I had a question. How many hours were you able to increase Joe's time
so,
by with the passage of the referendum? I wasn't sure.
So right now, in 2024, he was at 24 hours. So the hope is that he will be able to go to around 30 hours.
Around 30? Okay. Anybody else have any questions about the media department? Doug?
Could you talk a little bit more about the fundraising, I guess, or that extra money you talked about?
So, it was a little different year. The Harry Whitehorse Wood Sculpting Festival happened for the first time, and so we worked with them to propose some time to document the event, take pictures, video of the event, first time ever. And so essentially what I do is really just invoice out, propose to cover my costs, our department's cost of time. So I've talked with Leah and Neil and gotten, down to the cents of what is our hourly rate. And it's essentially what I'll charge so that the city's getting recouped for our time into creating content for other organizations. So that is how I work it. So there was that event. It was also the celebration on the shore for the Friends of San Damiano. And then we worked with the Monona Eastside Business Alliance to essentially just create a media library for them. So when they're doing their postcards and their mailers and their website and promotions on Instagram, we did some videos. And that was through them. We talked with them, met with them, and they told us what they wanted, and then we proposed, okay, here's what we think it would take our time and equipment to do those services. And so that's how it started. We actually have done that for them for 2 years now, 2023 and 24. And then we've also done a minor amount of sponsorship for the football broadcasts at the high school. And those are pretty small, and but that's one thing we do. And Joe has also done some good work working with local promotions companies, I should say, music promoters, to have some small sponsorships for local acts that are coming into town at the Barrymore or Sylvie, all those types of places. And I think that's currently right now about $5,800 he's kind of put together and done some sponsorship activities on the radio with promoters.
Your friends group is still fundraising too, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, trying to get the fundraising to be a little bit more focused on underwriting and sponsorship, so that there can be some levels if you want to underwrite at this level or the gold standard level, and try to get some bigger underwriters so that we can have a consistent revenue stream.
So, just so I'm clear, we actually had events at San Damiano that your department was able to make money off of.
Yeah, we covered the cost of the time we put into it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they set up all the, like for Celebration on the Shore, all the sound and everything.
Right.
And the video.
Right. So it's, I think moving forward, the challenge is how much do we do in the communications realm for the city compared to obviously going out and getting revenue, and when is that robbing Peter to pay Paul type of scenario start happening? I don't think we're there yet. The amount of time it took Joe to put together those relationships is any close to, how much time he put into how much money we got back. So I think that's in pretty good shape. And I think we have service to offer the community that shows the community that the city of Monona has a pretty robust, diverse way of communicating that they can utilize, that businesses can utilize, that our economic development sector can really look at and try to lean on us a little bit more. I think that's a feather in our cap.
Neil, did you?
Just, got to the point I was going to make, and obviously it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in terms of, providing those services that are paid services, which are great, and it's a great revenue stream, but those are all hours then that are not being dedicated towards city or school types of things. But certainly want to say, I want to applaud Will and his staff for, certainly in terms of the referendum, he was an absolute critical part in terms of getting out communications on the website and really growing and coordinating our social media efforts. Without him, that would have been, we would have had to contract that out and actually do something really tangible with that. So I think that, and even going forward, so we've really grown that presence in terms of without him, I don't think in his department, that really would not have been possible. So I know in terms of, at least in my, a little over a year and a half I've been here, communications has been a goal and something that's been refer to regularly. I think it's pretty commendable that the amount of efforts, and it's from everything from the newsletter to doing videos for, even especially even with ours for the referendum, that was all produced internally. So that's an asset that a lot of communities do not have, especially certainly at the quality that these guys provide here. And, you know, I told him to show off a little bit, and he failed to mention, again, I think he maybe brought last time about being Studio of the Year here for what is it, who was it actually?
Madison Music Association, yeah.
Yeah, so our little volunteer radio station here is being, you know, lauded as the best music station basically in the Madison area here, so. So if we want to have some
In the whole
measurements.
state.
Yeah, in terms of-
Wisconsin.
Yeah, I said, in terms of, we want to make sure how we're actually measuring that, and I mean, that's an outside source in terms of the quality of what's being done at the station. I think that's a pretty good indicator, so.
Well, and if we're going to keep patting on the back, I'll say the one reason why we were also able to raise some revenue is because Brennan stepping in and having the ability to take on a big role in managing the high school to where I could focus on other things, and he
Yeah.
took over
Absolutely.
kind of the duties at the high school. And then on the other end, having Joe be able to really work with volunteers that I used to, curate more volunteers and train them to do more things than just have fun on the radio, but actually do some work that we need to get done. So those two guys really helped free my time up to be able to do those other things because of, you know, their skill level at their positions.
Two things.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Two things, so just when he's talking about Brennan being at the high school, we do get reimbursed from the high school, just so everybody's aware of that. They pay, basically, I believe, 75% of his salary, so it's almost more of a school employee, but he's underneath our health insurance and all that stuff. They do, you know, we do pay for that. And as far as, more in general, as far as like getting reimbursed for some of these fees, the city has been more active with special events. It's not just Will's stuff, you know, for police departments, fire, anything there's more of these special events, we are charging for stuff. So it's kind of been a city policy we've been looking at in the last 4 or 5 years, that we never used to do that, and we realized we had to start doing that, so.
Mark,
that's
do you mean that, do you mean to say that community media is billing other city departments?
No, they're just billing these festivals, so like
Yeah,
if
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
festival and all that stuff. So when they're working, it's not like we're
Yeah.
billing them just like we would in the
Right.
parks and police and everything.
And we would only bill them if they asked us to do some coverage.
right,
If we would go on behalf of the city to get it, just because we know it's beneficial for the city to
Yeah,
have some
yeah.
nice pictures of people enjoying themselves in Monona, then that's another thing.
Nancy, did you
Yeah, I
have
was
something?
just going to say, as somebody who more or less lived at San Damiano for about 15 days around the festival and was a part of the leadership in putting it together, like, the guys were huge. Like, we, you know, just really appreciated the support at so many different levels, and you know, we budgeted at the festival level, because we knew right up front, you know, we budgeted for community media and for Parks and Rec, and for, you know, we had a line item around all kinds of city services and support. So and you guys did a great job, so thank you.
Thank you. I was just curious, Will, have we seen more downloads on the Monona Go app? How has that sort of played out over the years? I know right away, when I was on community media, I know we had like over 1,000 downloads of the app, but I don't know, has that number gone up or is kind of held the same, or?
You know, that's a good question. I haven't
Yeah.
asked that question of them. I basically have to ask
Sure.
them, and then they look and give me the
Yeah.
information. But now that you reminded me, I will.
Yeah.
What we end up dealing with is just networking, right? The
Yeah.
IT controls the world, and every time something goes down, you have to get a hold of an IT person, whether it's with the company for the app or whether it's the school district's IT, and then somehow I have to communicate with them so they understand each other. And so we've dealt with that over the last week of just having, you know, SSL certifications not work, if anyone knows what that is.
working today.
Yes, we finally got it up, but I think if anything with the app, it's been interesting just at the technical level of how much it relies on everybody to be able to talk to each other through the network.
Thank you.
Brian?
Mark, do we have in this book, or is it only in the capital book, the fund balances for each of the areas?
Oh, we have it.
Can you,
Page 14. So, cable TV. I don't know why it's 136, but it's 23,000 is what it is. Correct that.
I was only curious, not necessarily pointing at media, but it was one that jumped out at me, especially because the city tax portion was a pretty significant increase from previous years. And
Right.
just looking to see, boy, do we have fund balance to help split the difference, but at $23,000, we don't. I think we should be looking at that for many of our budgets. If some of our fund balances are in a healthy position, that's taxes that we've already collected. And we should be utilizing that if it's beyond a healthy stage.
It's a good point.
And I think we've known for a long time that this is the media collections, or media department's gonna require more and more tax, dollars. It's not realistic to expect the whole thing to be run by volunteers as it started, and we put a lot of money into the equipment out of the franchise fees, but eventually some of those are gonna start to need replacement or whatever, and, yeah, so I don't see it getting better.
Well, and we will continue to look for ways to bring in revenue that's not going to drastically affect our ability to assist the city in the needs that are needed here.
And I think you've definitely become more a part of just the communications efforts of the city, outside of just radio and TV.
Yeah, I mean, because, like I
Which is
say,
one of
because
our goals.
Brennan and Joe can do that work, I can then be back in the administration wing of things and be more, at least, you tend to know more things and involved in more things when you're actually there instead of off-site.
It is handy having him right outside
Yeah.
the office, actually.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Next up, we are hearing from somebody across the sea, Jerry McMullen for
Yes.
Fire and EMS. Jerry, are you
Yep,
there?
he is there.
Oh
Jared, can you hear us
my
okay?
Yes, sir. Good morning from tomorrow.
Yeah, what time is it there? Whoops.
1:15 or so.
Oh, whew. So you won't see the beverages sitting on the counter behind him, but
Yeah.
he's still on vacation. Thanks for joining us, Chief.
What page are we on?
What page, page number?
We're starting with Fire
Fire-
63.
Yep.
Thank you.
And remember, this is the budget that is, a lot of it is split with EMS.
Yep.
See how Jerry's internet is doing here. He might
Yeah, I'm
be-
good still, audio-wise. I just thought I'd shut my video off.
Okay, there we go.
I'm just gonna start at the top and hit the points of increase. A significant increase at this point on the fire side. First with overtime. Thankfully, we've got an addition to that. I can count on one hand the amount of time that I've been fully staffed since I started. So we unfortunately use a considerable amount of overtime to help cover those open shifts. Is everybody hearing me fine?
Yes, Jerry. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. The biggest change on the fire side, you'll notice in line item 800 for the POP, our volunteer paid on-premise program, that shows a significant increase. What we did is we actually zeroed out the paid on-call program and the EMS POP program in the ambulance budget and added all those together and then increased it by approximately $50,000. The idea behind this is to make us a bit more competitive with our peers in Dane County that also have POP programs. but to also prioritize having our staff at the station. 15 years ago, we were about an 85-15 mix. 85% of our volunteers were within the city and 15 were outside the city. That has flipped almost exactly now. About 85% of our volunteers come from outside the city. So the idea was that we would prioritize staffing at the station to get them in the city. And eliminating the paid on-call program altogether. So if folks that are not on the schedule in a POP shift, if they do respond to a call, they get paid on a sliding scale of the POP shift. I do have an entire document put together. I'm happy to share with you folks when I get back so you can see the brainchild that this is. Again, it prioritizes people being at the station and also gives slight increases in the stipend, their base stipend, based on the amount of education they get for the department. So we have a baseline of firefighter 1 for our firefighters, or EMT for our EMS only folks. As they get more education, their base stipend increases slightly.
Jerry, do you mind if I talk about this for 1 quick second? The reason we did
Absolutely.
put 50,000 in there for the referendum was in the referendum. I don't know if you guys know why this is. It is kind of important that we kind of put this in there. I don't know if you're aware, for each shift, there's 3 full-time people on there. 2 for the ambulance, two on the ambulance, which is required to have 2 people, and 1 that runs the engine of the full-timers. Because of the way the schedule's set to 48 hours, we probably don't have 3 people on. It's rare that we have 3 people on at one time, just because the way the schedule's set up with vacations and what they call Kelly days, because, you know, they get like a day off every so often on their shifts, like once a month, they'll get like an extra day off. So what happens if we can't find somebody to come in, like an LTE, we only have 2 people in, 2 full-timers, which are to run on the ambulance. So if that ambulance is on a call, middle of the night, and we don't have the paid on premise, that's why we're kind of moving this number up, there's nobody in the station. So there's a fire call. Our ambulance people could be on, I mean, there is a fire. The 2 people on the ambulance are already at a call. They'd be at that location. We'd have to wait till the volunteer comes in and grabs a truck and get out. So there's a lot of issues, time delay. So having at least 1 person in there, or at least a little bit now with this money, we get better coverage. That's the hope. But it is a little bit of an issue when we have the minimums. Our minimums is 2. So that's the one issue why we put more money in there too. I don't know if people know how that happens.
Brian?
Mark, wasn't some of this caused by when we made the shift change in the time, which caused this?
Well, they used to be from 56 to down to 48, so there's less, yes. But that did
Part
have a
of
little
this
bit of
was
effect.
a contract negotiation
Yeah.
issue that caused an additional gap in time.
Well, we still always had that issue. It was more, and it was never as big of an issue, even with that, because they always still had like a Kelly day here and there. I think the big factor is what he said, is we don't have Monona volunteers anymore. So if there's a fire, you got people that, we have Dan Eckloff, if he wasn't around, or a couple other people, I don't remember their names. You know, there's people from Cambridge that works for us, Sun Prairie, West Side Madison, and some other areas. So even if it wasn't that reason, we just don't have the volunteers in Monona as much. So that's a bigger issue too.
Okay.
And it's hard to get volunteers.
So expect them to come from Cambridge or whatever to help at a fire is kind of problematic.
Yeah, so that's
If
one.
we pay them more, hopefully they will come and stay at the
So
station.
I just want people to be aware of that.
They're required to stay
Yeah.
at the station.
Right, exactly.
Sorry about that, Jerry.
Yeah, no worries. And again, I agree with that. There has been a slight increase in the amount of Kelly days, but we had these same gaps from the day that I started. Typically, to answer the question of Kelly days, 4 days out of 7, we should be at full staffing. So we'd have 3 people here. And 3 days out of the week, we'd be at minimum staffing, which is 2 people. But unfortunately, just in the last year, we were down 2 full-time staff which created a minimum staffing situation on 2 of our 3 shifts, and they still had Kelly days on top of that. So again, the idea with this is we want to focus more on getting people into the station and staffing the station. And to do that, we would increase their base rate from what we're paying now. Let's see here, moving further down the line here, other increases, especially on the bigger side, is equipment maintenance and repair. Several of the departments got some additional training money out of the referendum. I asked that the training money from the ambulance budget be subtracted and added in on this budget for equipment maintenance and repair. One of the things with this particular line item, since COVID, the shop hour costs of the Pierce dealer that does all the repair work on our trucks has doubled. When I started, they had just increased it from 85 to 105. It's now $185 an hour just to have somebody look at the trucks. Part costs have gone up, labor costs have doubled. So these big trucks take a considerable amount of maintenance to keep running. The minimum inspections that are required every year, the DOT inspections and the annual inspection for the big trucks, the 2 engines and the ladder, by itself is close to $11,000 just for the bare minimum. Hey, take a look at it, make sure it's still in good condition. Does not cover any of the things that they find that need to be repaired. Annual ladder certification is almost $3,000 just to have the ladder certified every year to NFPA standards. So the cost of tires, the ladder truck alone was almost $10,000 for tires this year. And that was on state bid pricing. So thank you, Mark and the mayor and Neil for increasing that up to that $35,000 mark. The only other one I'll touch on out of this is the firefighter equipment. You'll see that's gone from 6 to 15. That is the absorption of what used to be our durable equipment line item in the capital budget was moved over into the operating budget.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to take any questions at all on the fire side.
Any questions? I guess not. Do you want to move to EMS, which is 139?
Great. All right, on the ambulance side, we have had significant issues on the billing side of things outside of our control. Multiple issues that I believe have been corrected, and Mark, you can speak to that a little bit as well. We appear to be doing better than average over the last couple of months. So again, I believe the billing issues have been corrected. Well, technically this is a public meeting. I have been working with our billing company to reduce our billing rate as well. I have something in my email box waiting for me when I get back on Monday that I'll be bringing up to Neil to take a look at and see what we want to do with that. So that projection for the ambulance fee was lowered simply due to, again, we had these issues outside of our control. We want to make sure that we hit our target for next year. So that got lowered by $40,000. Another component of that is a program that the state implemented but has not gotten approval from the federal government yet, which is a GEMTS program, which was supposed to provide us about $35,000 in state funding. It's still hung up at the federal level. So that was removed out of the ambulance fee as well for next year until they actually approve it and start giving us the money that they're supposed to be giving us. And that is a program designed to make up money for Medicaid payments as opposed to what it actually costs us to provide the service. Overtime again was increased. Again, thank you very much for that. The big increases on the this side, we got $7,000 in professional development. This is the money that we use for folks to go to conferences. They earn CEUs to help them renew their EMS licenses, basically. We get to spread this to the whole department. When I first started, that professional development line item was nothing more than the 9 full-timers getting a refresher every year. So the rest of the department, the other 50 members of the department got no professional development training out of that. It was solely for the 9 members to get their refresher training that they needed every year. We now do that in-house through our medical director. So we can utilize that money and spread it among the rest of the department to get further training and other CEUs outside of the department. EMS supply is seeing a big increase. They're up 35% just this year, which was an unforeseen increase. And we have 6 different providers that we order from, so we kind of play them against each other. But there is a state contract price that most of them won't go under, and that entire thing has gone up 35% this year. Equipment maintenance and repair has gone up. This is the ambulances. So anything we find on the ambulances, whether it's tires, batteries, anything with the durable equipment inside the ambulances, such as the batteries for the Zoll monitors, Lucas device repairs, that goes under that line item. Other than that, again, I'm happy to answer any questions at all regarding the ambulance budget.
Questions, anyone?
I was gonna ask about the revenue issues, but he already addressed that, so.
Nancy, did you have something?
And I will.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
I will be proactive as well and address Alder Moore's question for the other departments. On the fire side of things, what would have been cut would have been the POP program without the referendum.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry.
On the ambulance side, line item 119, which is our LTE program, that would have been cut to make up the shortfall without the referendum funding.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I guess that's all we have for you, Jerry, so you can go to bed now.
Bon voyage.
All right, you folks have a wonderful night.
You have a good journey home.
Hopefully your heart will go on.
Yes.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, good night all.
Next is police and dispatch. Police is on page 56.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Chief.
Hi.
Happy to represent part of our wonderful public safety team. Good to hear from the chief. Okay, so law enforcement, right? So that's where we're starting?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go down the line here. Mark will have to grab a seat. As you know, the labor and the city, labor union and the city are currently under contract negotiations. So Mark was put in a number for our salary or overtime, an early anticipated number that is obviously not the final number. That is something that you all and the union will have to ratify. But for that first line, the shift differential, which is contractually at the moment obligated, and our part-time wages. So we have a part-time officer cadre program. We had an officer who needed to resign for, he had more responsibilities with his permanent job in up near Shawano, and he's a canine officer now, and so as you can imagine, that's a lot of time. So, and with young children too. So, so we have a vacancy. We were actively recruiting and have been for some time for our part-time officer position. What that does is that really helps us alleviate some of the overtime vacancies from, number one, having to force your officers to work longer shifts when we have somebody potentially who can come in. And we could use the help with some of the wonderful events we have here in Monona, just to have an extra body on hand to staff an intersection, to provide an extra eyes and ears, et cetera. So that's what that $5,000 is funded for in the part-time wages. We've not had to utilize that. A little bit of it from some training, I think, but outside of that, we've not had to utilize that. Longevity pay, that is a contractual thing as it stands right now. We budgeted $500 because of, I'm guessing, one officer that is due to receive it in 2025. Moving down, leave wages, that's something that's factored in as well when we have folks that are off or on leave. Let me back up. For everyone's, all of you are familiar, but for the public who may be listening, we have 21 officers, including myself, that work for the police department, and 5 dispatchers, which is a separate budget that we'll talk about here soon. We currently have 1 vacancy as of October of this year that is being held open. So we're operating with 20 officers in essence currently. We have an active recruitment process which closed recently. We'll be doing interviews with some prospective candidates, and the PFC has scheduled a meeting on the 10th of December, thanks to Leah's help. So that's just to catch everyone up on that.
And we had held that open until we knew the outcome of the referendum.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I'll tell you that, yes, that did have some impact on our recruiting as well, with folks not necessarily wanting to commit to a place where they weren't sure if they were going to have a job. Yeah. So we did see probably lower numbers than we probably would have in our recruiting. And Will was up here mentioning the work that he was doing. He did a wonderful job of putting together a recruitment video for us, which we've gotten amazing feedback from folks that we probably would have never been able to reach that came across that recruitment video, the first of its kind for the police department. So again, I'm back there nodding my head as Will was talking about all of the work that he does, and he certainly does it for those of us as his colleagues as well. So Neil,
That's great. Yeah, Neil,
did you have
I was just going to point out that I think Chief is being very delicate. I'm talking about, like, we pretty much had no candidates prior to the referendum. I mean, we had 0 people qualified. Yeah. So I don't want to understate the impact that the referendum has had on at least the ability to at least give us a fighting chance to get a good qualified recruit for the position.
Yeah, and your police department, you all need to be picky as to who works here and who provides public safety for you all. And so if we determine, and the PFC as well, determines that nobody is qualified, we're going to start from scratch of the current candidates. But I believe we have some potential there. We'll see how they do. And we've not backgrounded them yet, et cetera, so we'll see how they do. So, okay. Keep me in check, Neil. Keep doing that.
No, I just want to say that was, just didn't want to understate the importance of that had, so.
Yeah. School crossing guard, that is something that you'll probably see with the approval of the mayor here present to you sort of a work classification change to creating a community service officer position that allow that, and I think I've talked about that
That's
here.
nice.
That'll allow that position to actually issue tickets for the city. Right now, our crossing guard does that role, but issues warnings for parking violations. Egregious ones, we go out to, he notifies us, we put it in the queue for officers when they're available. I go out there, I write tickets. But we've seen positive impacts already within the area, particularly around the high school, of the work he's doing out there. So I deemed it a successful program, presented it to the mayor and our city administrator, and we're asking for that to be funded next year, which is why you'll see that his current dollar amount increase to $12,000.
And I think we have some other ideas about other things we might be using him for as well.
That's correct.
Right, so more on that to come.
Overtime, so with the whatever increase in salaries that you provide your wonderful officers, we'll have to compensate with overtime. I will tell you though, however, as of now, our overtime budget's doing quite well. We have the vacancy, right? But we also have an officer who's on light duty because that officer's expecting. So we have 2 people fewer on the streets. And so we've had, in the latter part of this year, have had to pay overtime to cover vacancies. And plus, guess what? It's November. All of you are here. Thank you for your service. But most people are all hunting. For those so I have a lot of officers who chose that as their first pick vacation. And so we have a lot of officers who are utilizing vacation for that. Marcia?
Plus, it's easier if they're gone during the summer.
Yes.
Because of Luke, he's no longer at the school, so that makes a little bit different, but this is not at the school. So there was one other thing I forgot.
So that is the overtime, is the 100 to 144 primarily related to the wage change?
Yes.
More so
It's
than
not.
hours?
You didn't compensate them for the
More
wage?
so than hours?
Part of it's for the wage stream, and part of it is part of the referendum was to have more overtime, because they're the same situation.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of their guys
Right.
run into the comp time issue. So they do the same thing, where they're not getting,
So,
he has to manage his budget, so
Yeah.
a lot of them will take the comp time so they don't go over the budget. It's a
Okay.
shell game a little bit.
it is. So here's what it is. And I'll give the union and the association credit for being team players here, and I think they deserve it. But they understand the fiscal constraints. They understand that the chief has a budget. They understand that, hey, we have to try to monitor some of these things. And so they voluntarily take comp time and take the time and comp instead of paying it out for a lot of the activity that they do. And I cannot force them to do that, but they're choosing to do that. And I thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. This provides them an opportunity to actually get paid for the work that they're doing versus save that in the bank and try to find some time off where the schedule allows in order to use that time. Time off is a precious commodity. This wonderful workforce enjoys time off, but they also, they're growing families. They're paying the same tax increases as many of you are here in Dane County, and so it would be nice to get them to have that opportunity to they can now, but to feel comfortable in that they can take the time and pay. Yeah, that's owed to them, right, for the work that they're doing for the city. Police event, overtime, we should have a lot of that returned to us, Mark,
We will.
from
just not in-
billed out. We didn't, prior to a couple of years ago, we didn't used to bill for those services for special events. Some organizers are still adjusting to that, but everyone else bills. So
Yeah.
we've been working with the event organizers, as you know, the Community Festival and the Memorial Day Parade and others. And they can apply, most of them can apply for tourism grant funding as well. Okay, I'm moving down the line here unless you have any questions with FICA that Mark can answer. Retirement that has gone up. The insurance, I think you've heard about, correct? Going up, okay. Professional development, if you're comfortable jumping down the line there. So what comes out of professional development, and I know we've added training if you approve it, which I very much need and appreciate, but as a reminder for professional development, that is also, what comes out of that is our hiring process. So our mental health backgrounds that are required, our psych evaluations, our medical screening process, all of that, which is not cheap, for our prospective candidates, comes out of that fund. So that dwindles down very, very fast when we have a vacancy and we have 2 or 3 candidates that we're sending to get evaluated potentially.
And those are required expenditures.
As
Chief.
required by state, LESB, in order to be qualified and certified as a police officer in Wisconsin.
Pay a certification fee for everybody?
So no, we don't. So not for PD, there's like time certification
Yes.
that we have to pay for. That comes out of our dispatch budget as well.
Okay.
So yes and no, we can sort of share between the 2 budgets. We need 24 hours of training to maintain certification in the state of Wisconsin as police officers. And so we've been stretched thin. We've had to be very, very creative, running out of that creativity. And so that $15,000 that is proposed here will help us get to that a lot easier, and it'll help us expand on getting qualified trainers to talk on very important topics here, such as DEI topics, unconscious bias topics. I've cashed in all my favors, and so presenters, qualified ones, cost money. So,
Yeah, and training, unfortunately, is one of the things that we've had to cut of non-personnel things in recent years, so.
yes, prior to me getting here even, yeah. Uniform allowance, that's contractual. At the current contract is $750. I'm not sure, I have not been a part of negotiations, nor can we talk about it, but I'm not sure if that dollar amount's going to change, but currently it's $750 per officer. The telephone contract with the services that we use, Officers and squad cars have cell phones in which we transfer complainants to, et cetera, that only want to talk to police by phone. Our service contracts, that has gone up a little bit as well. I think you've heard plenty about how contracts have gone up. Office supplies, we kept that stagnant. Police supplies, which is I know they sound similar, but it's a completely different group and category. That has increased out of necessity. Our equipment and, police operating expenses, we've added another $1,000 proposed there. Police operating expenses, that's stagnant. Equipment and repair, if I'm following this correctly and memory serves, that's the same. This is a little bit of a jump here, is vehicle maintenance, and here's why. We've all had to make you all have had to make some very challenging decisions in terms of our capital budget. We typically try to get 2 squad cars every year. And as you all know, because I've mentioned this, when we forego doing that a year, that means we're likely going to have to pay maintenance costs on whatever our oldest squad is that we have not been able to replace. So we've seen an increase in our maintenance costs in terms of our squad cars. However, as more and more of us get all electric vehicles with fewer moving parts, we should hopefully see that go down. They are able to last longer and the maintenance is lower. Community events, you've heard me talk about this. I think it's important that this council see it, and this community funds community events. Those pay for things such as the bounce house and things at National Night Out, or if we have an engagement event with the community and we want to provide something, it goes a long way. Right now, it's currently funded by donations. We still expect to solicit that. However, I will tell you that in terms of priority and my needs, although community engagement is something that we'll always continue to do, our K-9 unit, other than the officer's salary and the fuel that we put in the car, is funded by donations. So the vet bills, the food, anything related to that K-9 comes through donations. And so we typically try to ask folks to donate to our K-9 fund versus community engagement. But they've been very, very generous in the past couple of years since we've zeroed out that line item and donating to things like Shop with a Cop, for example, that's coming up. So. Police equipment, that line item has changed because I think you all are making the wise decision instead of borrowing for capital items that we previously have done, such as tasers, body-worn cameras, that you're moving it to an operating expense. So that's why that number has jumped. That'll allow us to get replacement tasers and body-worn cameras. And in fuels and additives, we're doing pretty good so far this year. I expect that to continue to do okay. However, you should know, well, you all know that the hybrid vehicles are not offered for the squad cars as of right now. I foresee that changing once the technology catches up. And as more and more of us start to drive EV cars on the administrative side of the house of the police department, you'll see that number sort of go down. So I'm hoping that that'll continue to be the case. Speaking of EV vehicles, I test drove one with our fleet detective, as I call him, so assigned, out in Oconomowoc. It's an all-electric Blazer that's specifically designed for police. There are 2 currently in the state. One's at the dealership, and the police department in Superior, Wisconsin, has theirs as of 2 weeks. So didn't get a lot of feedback from, didn't get a lot of feedback from them. I think they're still outfitting it. But let me tell you, I was highly, highly impressed by this car, its capabilities, and I think if it was just a tad bigger, we might have actually been able to use it for our patrol vehicles. It just doesn't have the tailgate space for all of our equipment that we need for patrol. However, it will be perfect for detectives, for our community resource officer potentially, for me, for our assistant chief, for our lieutenant. It's an all-electric vehicle with 200, I think 60, 70 miles range. So thank you to those of you, Alder Bernstein, who have nudged me and said, have you considered this? Take a look at this, take a look at this, and keeping it in mind so that I can take you up to the task, and I did that. And so I think you'll see me here in December asking for an electric vehicle. Plus, we get $7,500 back. That helps. Let's take advantage of it while that
Yeah,
lasts.
I was just going to say that.
So that's all I have for law enforcement.
Any questions for the chief?
I was just curious about the K-9 fundraiser event. How did that turn out? And
Which one? We've had several.
The one at,
We've had one that was hosted.
the one at Sal's, how much money did we?
We raised over $1,000.
That's
It is
wonderful.
absolutely wonderful, very gracious, and generous. We really
We're still
appreciate it.
raising for it, so I'm not quite sure, because we still have some of those pizzas left.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
those pizzas are great.
So people can still come down and
I don't-
donate to the
You
cause?
have to ask the owner.
Nice, nice.
Just the Uncle Tony, though.
And then, how,
Anyway.
so how much do you hope, how much do you need in this fund?
Yeah,
And
I
how?
was going to ask that.
So, one of my goals for 2024, we didn't quite get there, we'll try to get there 2025, and the mayor will have to approve this, is to expand to another K-9.
Yeah,
And I think I've talked about that here.
yeah.
I think we'll need roughly about 50K. We're at 20-something, close to 30 right now. We had a very, very successful K-9 outing. A lot of you contributed to that. That's our biggest fundraiser of the year, our golf outing. Now, golf and bags tournament, because I don't golf, so we had to add bags. Very, very successful. I think we're going to get there in 2025, and I'm already doing some planning as
Just
to
purely on fundraising. You'll-
purely on fundraising.
Now, is that to purchase the dog?
Purchased a dog to send the
Train.
officer and the dog to training,
Yeah.
which is several weeks. And then now you're also talking about 2 animals that need care and
Yep.
food, and
Yep.
and so it's doable. We just need to keep our fundraising goals where they need to
What
be.
type
What
of
do you-
specialty?
It'll be a patrol dog as well.
So like a,
It'll be
Apprehension.
search and tracking. It'll be drug detection, SEV, marijuana, and it'll be apprehension and protection.
What
And the canine, just so you know, and I know you've heard about Jocko.
Yeah.
Jocko is a very big deterrent, and we have a lot of compliance when the warnings are made and the barks are barking, that the dog will be released. And we've saved officers and suspects from injury as a result of just simply having the dog present. From very violent and dangerous people, including people with literally guns in hand
Yeah.
last year.
And you can call off
We can recall
that
the dog.
weapon, which is, you can't do with
Absolutely.
other weapons. Yeah.
Right. Once
Yeah.
once a taser's deployed,
Yeah.
it can't be.
Right, right.
I wish it was Star Trek. It's not. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
We can't turn it off until. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't stop it from hitting the target.
Yeah.
Same with our less lethal shotguns, etc. The dog can stop in its tracks, and that's what that training pays for.
Yeah.
And we certify that dog to do that every year. We make sure that that dog passes a national certification and that litmus test to make sure that team, it's a team,
Yeah.
can do that.
What is the total cost, annual cost for Jocko for a year outside of the officer time? And what, that you're fundraising for?
Yeah, we probably spend about $85 or so $100 on Jocko. It fluctuates because a lot of times we, for example, the dog is sick or gets injured, which has happened, and we never get a vet bill. Sometimes we do. So we just have, very generous people that decide that they're not going to charge us. Sometimes, as of right now, we have somebody that's donating food for us, and we'll take it and we're appreciative, but we can't depend on that, right? Because things change and businesses go out of business, et cetera. But everyone who donates gets a handwritten thank you card, a baseball card with Jocko on it, and we try to give them some shout outs as well.
I do think the popularity is going to his head a little bit. I see even
Jocko?
Jocko's, yes.
Yes.
He's been enjoying the pets a little more. And
He's booked Jimmy Kimmel a couple times.
yeah,
So the Lioness, the wonderful Lioness Club, we did a presentation with them earlier in the year. They did a fundraiser, and they are donating, I'm picking up the check tomorrow, $1,500.
very nice.
Simply based on what they've heard and in the presentation that Officer Hoffman and Jocko did for the club. So it's things like that that we do to really try to, number one, inform and educate the community about that resource. Dogs can be kind of scary. Police dogs have a very violent history here in our country.
Yeah.
And so it's important to inform and educate the public on what that tool is, have them get close to Jocko and see that it's okay, and then talk about when we actually use them in action. So, Alder Moore, can I get to your question?
Sure, you
Okay.
absolutely can.
One of the things that we're already doing and would have been on the pause block, not chopping block, is to hold that vacant position open.
Sure.
As well as reduce our fuel budget. I provided a number that Mayor Veal and our wonderful finance director probably were like, that's not practical. I challenged them and said, watch me. And that meant we were going to have
You
to
just
park.
buy me that electric car.
And now we know what he was talking about.
No, but in practice, it's actually been done, because I worked for an agency that did it. We'd have to park our cars. And we would not be as proactive as we are. Now, obviously, we'd be strategic about that as to when. We wouldn't advertise, et cetera. But that would have been one of our sacrifices. Some of the things we've already done is as it impacts our capital budget, for example, is how frequently are we replacing our tasers and our body cameras? We're actually over the years now in which the company supports the technology, but they still work, right? And the software is still working for now. But that's some of the sacrifices that we've made on the law enforcement side of the house.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone have any questions about his budget?
I just have a comment that in the descriptive part of it, I like the fact that you included the 2024 budget number in there, so I think that'd be a great thing actually to have in all the
Oh, on
budgets.
the,
So it makes it really easy. You can then, it's easier to look at this or
Yeah.
the spreadsheet, whichever you want, but you can see it, so that's it.
yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. Okay, well, if no one has anything else about law enforcement, we will move on to dispatch, which is page 72.
Chief, while we're finding that page, I just want to verify, did I hear you say the K-9 unit is funded 100% through?
Not the office.
No.
You're paying
The
for the
dog.
officer,
The
you're paying for
dog.
the fuel, the dog is 100%.
The dog is
And the
100%.
training
Yeah, yeah.
is through. And there are some things with the vehicle itself, like the kennel inserts, the reason why the K-9 program doesn't buy the car outright is because I want the city to be, although you own the K-9, right? But I want the city to be able to do with that car what they want.
Yeah.
Versus it being from the K-9 fund and purchased for that specific purpose. I think that might come, I'm not the accountant in the room, but that might present some auditing challenges if
Yeah.
we try to change that around. But the equipment in the vehicle that's K-9 specific is funded through that program as well.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to move on to dispatch then?
Okay.
72?
Yep, and I'll speed up appropriately, but not too fast. Dispatchers, let me tell you,
Oh, thank you.
I think the staffing or the compensation study showed, you have a team of all women, wonderful women dispatchers. They are incredibly underpaid. Our most senior dispatcher has been here for 18 years, makes just as much money as somebody who I hired 2 years ago. I think I'm about right there, right, Leah? So the study that you all invested in is really, if you approve this, is going to pay off dividends. It's already, even though they know it's not officially approved, I'm already seeing some of the morale increase and the positivity that's coming from it. They feel like this community values them. And are going to start to compensate them. And they all live in Dane County. So they all pay very expensive rent, very expensive mortgages, and some are single parents, right? So paying them what they were paying was a real challenge. And so thank you all, thank you to this community. If you approve this, especially thank you for providing them with that increase in salary. Going through the line items, things that are impactful for the day-to-day professional development. Our dispatchers, between 5 of them, used to share $1,000. That's very, very challenging. And so we would do the alternate year, every other 2 year, you get this training 2 years from now, you'll get it 2 years from now. And by that time, the training's completely different. So now, with this proposal of $6,000, I'm hoping to get our dispatchers high-quality training, all of them, in the same year that they deserve to do their job. I have a dispatcher almost in tears, because this is a public document, and so she saw this, and she mentioned how, does this mean I actually get to go to these trainings that I've put in for? Right? And it's, I mean, these are work trainings, right? She's not going to Disney World. She's learning, you know what I mean? But that shows how passionate these dispatchers are and really want to do a good job and really want to be at the top of their game. You have a dispatcher who's been here for 18 years. That's an immense amount of talent, knowledge, and experience that she wants to build on, for example. And she's one of the ones that approached me. $2,500 that went up for criminal records checks. We expect that we're going to have to do more records checks for applications of vendors, of alcohol tavern license, chair of the LRC sitting in the room. We expect that there'll be more of those, and so we're asking for to help offset whatever anticipated increase in that. And we do not control the cost to run the criminal records checks. That's the state that does. So if they raise it, we need to be prepared. You'll see the increase for the service contracts. There's an acronym, MPSIS. That's that Consortium Technology Group, Records Management Sharing Group. And I put in a narrative that Monona, of the 5 agencies, we pay the least. It's like 7% of the consortium that we actually pay. That includes a full-time analyst that I have access to today. By the way, that analyst is a resident of Monona, right? So please know that he lets me know anytime there's anything suspicious happening in and around his neighborhood. But he was instrumental in helping us solve our shooting as well, the one in front of O'Connor Smith. Without a crime analyst who can actually search through the data, who can actually do some matching, who can scour other police reports from other jurisdictions, can put pieces of the puzzle together, we probably would have done it because I have a talented investigative team, but he certainly helped put things together. But he's a resource for all the data requests that I get. I go to him, and he produces that data that all of you often ask and inquire about. Without that, you'd get it, but it'd be significantly delayed without that. So, and it also ties us into a shared records management system. That means that we have access to not only our internal records, but Sun Prairie's, Middleton's, Verona's, Fitchburg, the suburban agencies' data as well, their records, which is very, very important. Any questions on that? Okay. Dispatch supplies, that went up a couple $100s. And then the dispatch equipment, that again is something that instead of placing it in the capital budget, we moved it to the operating.
Yeah, it's computers.
Computers, television monitors. We have CCTV, as you all know, and the monitors are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those things burn out, even though they're very efficient. Once they get old, we need to replace them.
Just one thing, and Chief doesn't even know about it, I forgot to tell you. So for the 2025 budget, we had 8,000, and we did with the mayor, put an additional $3,000 in for a camera. The camera's going to overwatch the, I don't remember if I told you.
No.
It's going to overwatch the
Drop-off box.
voting.
Drop box.
Oh,
The drop
okay.
box. So,
Yep.
because right now we don't have any coverage, and that's one of the reasons, I don't know the whole reason, but that's one of the reasons why the drop box was not out there. Now we'll have a camera on it, and so it kind of meets our requirements. So that's part of that number.
And we're going to
And
have to run electric.
At the-
too,
yeah,
right,
so it's gonna
as
be-
part of the expense,
And
yeah.
I'm assuming there was storage consideration,
Yeah.
discussions about that too. Yeah, I was involved in that consultation about the security of that, and I said, I'm concerned because there is no camera coverage.
Yeah. And I had several people ask me about it during the
Yeah, some people
last few months.
were unhappy that it was not available.
And they
this year,
wondered
but-
if we'd be able, somebody asked me if I thought we'd be able to get it in for the spring election, and I said, well, ground will probably be frozen, I don't know.
Right.
So,
Even though that resource is a safe mechanism to vote, right, to place your ballots in, I think many of us have seen examples in the most recent election of those being tampered or firebombed, et cetera. So it's very important that we protect that box.
yeah. Questions, anyone, on the dispatch budget? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, chief.
Now comes the gorilla in the room.
Do you guys need a break?
Yeah.
Yeah, does anybody want to take a
Before
break
going out.
before we get into Public Works?
I think that's a good idea. I'm gonna go to bed.
Will, do you want to put things on pause, or I know Will is in there?
You can only do one. You can
Do a
only do
recess.
Okay, we are back in session. And next up is Dan. And I guess should we start with general building,
Yes. Yep.
which is on page 52. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, we all had a handout from Dan
Yes.
as well.
So I did email the handout, printed out a copy for you all to follow along. I do things a little differently than some of the other department heads. I have 11 budgets totaling probably right around $6 million that I'm responsible for in the department. I'll cover the changes that are greater than 500 with an increase or decrease. And I won't be covering anything related to personnel. Finance director and administrative services director take care of a lot of the formula-based things for the personnel and other formula-based costs Mark takes care of as well. So mainly the operational items. Most of you may know we don't do a lot of, we're behind the scenes. We operate a lot behind the scenes. You see a lot of what we do between what we call the right-of-way. The crew is very good, very efficient. They're dedicated, they're professional, and most importantly, they enjoy working for you and the city. I have a great crew. So that said, we'll get busy here, just covering mainly the operational items, starting out with gas and electric utility. That increases by $8,000 next year. It includes electricity allocation for the library room right here that you're in, and City Hall. The combined rate increase next year is about 3.34%. We are also assuming that the solar panels will be removed from City Hall in '25, as well as here at the library. So if the panels don't come off, more than likely we won't be using the entire allocation for gas and electric. Outside services, we're increasing by about $865. That's mainly due to contractual costs that we have for that account line item. Our repair and maintenance services, those are things that we still hire contractors for, but not dedicated contracts. We're increasing that by $9,287. And that's just due to the need for increased maintenance and repair of City Hall. The operating supplies, we're increasing that by $800 based on need. Those are items like toilet paper, paper towels, things like that. And the repair and maintenance supplies increases by $500. Any questions for the City Hall budget? Okay.
I think then we next move to
Be the
page
public-
75, and it just kind of continues from there.
Right, the Public Works Administration budget.
78.
I guess it's 70,
Yeah. Oh,
77, or 78, I guess, I'm sorry.
sure you think I'm a total
No, I
Luddite.
don't, I'm just trying to help you out.
Okay. In Public Works Administration, we only have one item that's significantly increasing. It's the outside services account, and we're increasing that by $3,900. This has been an account that has been reduced over the past few years to save on some budget line items. This goes to pay our contracted engineers for work that is not dedicated to a capital project. So if there is a request that comes through the Public Works Committee and they want us to look into things, we'll hire one of our engineers to do a study and report back. So mainly, this account goes to those types of activities.
So if this goes to a well, a water well, it'll get reimbursed from the water account?
Any expenses for the water well will come out of the water utility budget.
Okay.
The well would be, that's what that's expensive is. So like the well, if it's directly related to like a well,
Okay.
then it'll go to the well. But if it's like a software thing, it's like say our accounting software, which has utilities and general, we'll just allocate a certain portion to them.
Okay.
We'll charge them for that share.
But this
Well,
could
okay.
apply to things that are utility costs, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. there is not a whole lot that comes up in the water utility that isn't project-based. So, we do have a lot of expertise in-house in the water utility, but if there's something that needs to be designed, we will bring it forward on the next capital budget. So mainly due to regulation, so we can't do something within the same year because just the timeframe for a project to go through the system.
Oh, okay.
So this is mainly traffic related.
Oh, okay.
For this kind of service.
Got it.
The next budget, the Highway Street Administration, I don't have any significant changes in that, but if there's any questions, more than happy to answer.
Doesn't look like it.
Otherwise, the next budget would be the shop, machinery, and buildings. I don't have that page number.
81, yep.
Okay. So in that budget, the gas and electric utilities is increased by $700. And that's basically due to the increase in base charges from gas and electric. Telephone increases by $1,000. Again, that's due to increase in charges for service. The garage material and supply, that increases by $1,500, and that basically covers items needed to do maintenance and repair on the Public Works facility. We also have contracts for the fire alarm down there, things of that nature. And the repair and maintenance supply account, that's looking at an increase of $2,000 there based on contract increases.
Dan, is the gas and electric utilities, does that include an adjustment for taking off those solar panels?
This is a very small one.
Yeah, it does not.
And will it make much difference? I don't
That
know.
one,
Yeah, I think the panels supply.
the roof will be down for a while. I don't think it's
Right.
gonna have much of an impact the first year. Next year we'll have to.
Right, yeah, next year.
Oh, so you're
Yeah.
thinking more. I was just wondering because you had accounted for it in the other,
Yeah.
the
Right.
general building one.
Because I assume the roof is gonna be down for a while, and so won't have as much electricity running through there for the first. You know, next year we'll have to adjust it for 26.
Especially if the solar panels don't
Yeah.
go back on,
Yeah.
till later.
I have a question for you, Dan. Can you,
Teresa?
can you speak to the decrease in the mechanic's salary?
It's just an allocation issue, so I reallocated to, he might have been spending more time in water, sewer, and stormwater. So it's just based on, so the mechanic works in stormwater, sewer.
Got it.
So
Okay.
It's just a reallocation.
It's reallocation.
Yeah, it did not decrease.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And you do a fair amount of that, right? Kind of reallocating
Like the
things.
same person works
Depending
in
on what they're
multiple
doing during the year.
budgets.
We
Okay.
have like a rolling average where they're spending some, like 2 or 3 years in a row, they might spend a lot in forestry or wherever. So
Okay.
It does change.
Wherever the demand for the work is, I
Sure.
think that's how
Yep.
it kind of
Yeah.
shifts the expense. Okay, the next budget after that would be the street maintenance and construction. The other personnel services increases by $600, and that accounts for increases in the program cost. Mainly, that's our random drug testing program. We do have adjustments in the other budgets for this line item as well. The streets outside service account, that's a big one. That increases by $14,000, and that adds back services that we cut over the past 4 to 5 years. Mainly the boulevard weed treatments, and then also the crack sealing and infrared heat patching that we used to do out of this line item. It looks like we have some funding coming back to us, so we'll bring those programs back again. The median and terrace maintenance, we requested $8,000. We are receiving an additional $5,200 to be allocated to the fund. Mainly, this money is spent maintaining the block walls at the intersections. We do have barns under contract to do spring maintenance each year. That comes to about a total of $4,000. So we can either add more intersection walls to that list, or we can come back in like July and do weeding and refresh those areas. We can add the entry sales landscaping areas to that as well. So I guess we'll take direction for I guess where that comes from based on any direction from Neil.
I guess I asked that that be added in, and as well as for parks in the library, because
Yep.
I've had a fair number of complaints about, plants obstructing the view of what street it was on the,
Right.
Okay.
that kind of thing. Same thing with park signs, several
Yeah.
park signs, that were just all summer, or half
Yeah.
the summer. And so, and I know when I talked to Missy about the park one, she said that would help to have they have
Sure.
people cleaning up in the spring.
Right.
But to have someone come midsummer and
Yeah.
the same thing with this. I know you guys try to keep up with it, but
Yeah.
The intersection walls, there are some property owners that maintain
yeah,
as part of their landscaping.
same with parks, yeah.
Yep. We used to have a third part-timer that was dedicated to maintaining these walls, but the hourly rates increased, and we basically didn't have enough money to cover 3, so we had enough to cover 2. So over the years, it's just due to funding and due to available people applying for these kinds of jobs. We haven't had the number of applications the past few years applying for the part-time positions, so hopefully this summer will be a little different,
Yeah,
so.
hopefully we want to give a good impression when people are entering the city,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
same thing with the parks, as far as I'm concerned, so.
Not that it necessarily requires that, but have we ever, made a connection to the Master Gardeners program or anything?
Oh, yeah, I think, the Master Gardeners, for example, used to take care of all the library gardens.
Right, and I was just thinking that Ryan was saying his people are aging out, and so.
Right,
And, all those guys have to put in a number of hours in order to
Right.
finish their certification. So
and I don't
just
know if
wonder
he's
it's
reached out
worth
to them
reaching out.
directly. I do know, a friend of mine who's a Master Gardener actually takes care of the street sign at the corner of Nichols and
Yes,
Monona Drive.
does a fabulous job.
Yeah, she's, brings her own water and everything, because of course, there's no water hook up there.
If she coordinates everything that's needed with Jeff, if she needs supplies, if there's different plants that we need to replace or replenish, she's been great over the years there, so.
And maybe
definitely
somebody
appreciate
should reach out to the Master Gardener program. I'm not sure if Extension still runs that, or who, I know they used to when I worked
believe
there.
so.
They're pretty easy to find
At the
out.
market, I think it's their signs.
Yeah.
And
Actually, their
Extension.
coordinator lives in Monona. She's retired now, but
Okay.
former coordinator. So,
The street sweeping disposal line item decreases by $500 based on need. We do a 50% split with the stormwater budget. Snow and ice equipment repair increases by $2,000, and that's based on need. The snow and ice supplies is decreasing by $6,300. We left
You got plenty of salt left over. huh?
2023 with with a full salt shed, so when we end the year with a full salt shed, we don't need to buy as much the following year, but if we have a heavy winter this year, then more than likely next year, that line will increase again, so I think Mark is pretty used to the fluctuation regarding the salt expense. Street sign repair and replacement, we're increasing that by $500, and that's strictly based on need. Is there any other questions for this budget?
Yeah. Street sweeping, I'm curious, you said the need is decreasing, right? You're not needing to sweep as much as you used to?
No, it's just based on disposal cost.
Oh, the cost.
So
of
we're
it.
still out there sweeping as much as we have. This is I believe, about the third year for this expense now, where we've actually line itemed it.
Ah.
So the initial year, we budgeted higher because we didn't have an actual cost. We haven't split it out. So we're just, I guess, rebalancing the actual cost of this program,
Okay, fine tuning the,
fine-tuning the budget.
yeah,
yeah.
got it.
Yep.
Please,
But
please just thank your guys for actually going out and sweeping while it's raining, too. FYI.
yeah, that's something we all learned at the information center.
Yes.
That session, right?
You actually save money by sweeping when the streets are wet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they have to
so-
bring a big old tank of water with them, so it's.
Right.
Yeah, I could tell he kind of tripped your wire a little bit.
A little bit. Any other questions for that budget?
I have one. The street equipment and repair budget is staying the same. That was, right?
Yeah, 13.5.
So I have snow and ice equipment repair. That one is increasing.
The one
Street,
right
right
above
above
it.
it.
350?
350. Stays
Staying at
the
13.5.
same. Was surprising, I guess.
Maybe that's related to just having a mechanic.
Yeah, there was no change in that.
Right.
Are you wondering why?
Yeah.
Just surprised.
I would have expected
We're just-
lines like that seem, have been going up quite a bit
Yeah.
in all the budgets.
No, we're doing a good job maintaining the expense there.
Okay,
Efficiency.
I'll come back later then.
I will not increase a line item if I don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's good budgeting.
Okay,
I agree.
good enough, yeah.
I appreciate the question, though.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Patrick?
The big loader that we have.
Yes.
I know that was getting close to towards the end of its life. What's the plan for that?
That was removed from this year's budget.
So it's next
I
year.
believe bumped into next year.
Okay.
So we'll be bringing that back.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
just curious.
And in defense of the mayor, when it comes to the public works projects and equipment getting bumped, we fully understand the funding, the limits on funding for capital projects. But when they do get bumped, I bring them back the following year for your consideration again. We're a team player in public works, and we understand the financial impact of every item in the capital budget, so.
And you guys have a big portion of the
We do.
capital budget.
Yeah.
I think in that particular case, I might be wrong, but wasn't the case, it's quite old, but there haven't been a huge amount of repairs, whereas you had some other things that you had to do a lot of repairs on
Right,
recently. I think
right.
that was the rationale.
It's pushing the age. I think it's either 18 or 19 years old
Yeah.
now. Our biggest expense in the last few years was buying $10,000 worth of tires.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You don't just run down to the corner store and buy those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Same
Okay.
place as the fire truck.
Right.
Next budget would be the road related facilities. The only item there that's increasing is our street lighting for the utilities. It's increasing by $9,000. That accounts for the rate increase. There are other charges that we assign to this account. Any street light pole and street light replacement that we need to do out in the city gets allocated to this account. In 2024, I think we've had probably 2 or 3 that have been taken out. I think we're going for restitution on 2 of them. But, knock on wood, I mean, we keep our fingers crossed that the Monona Drive lights do not get hit, because that's about a $10,000 bill from start to finish.
Yeah.
And there was that one a few months ago, middle of the day,
Yeah.
guy took out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, those are expensive lights to replace, and when we do have to buy new inventory, it comes out of this account, so. But mainly it goes to pay for power, to supply lights or power to the lights, the entry sales, things like that.
Do you have much luck getting restitution for those?
I would say 50-50 on that.
Yeah.
Sometimes their insurance companies push back. They don't like to pay the full cost of replacement because they say the light's been in your system for 10 years now.
Yeah.
So it's like a prorated cost. So,
One person paid $20, $25 a month.
Oh,
Really?
they didn't have insurance?
Well, they're in jail. So they or some, whatever.
Wow, that's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
I've been getting,
Yeah.
I've been getting
something.
restitution checks from Maine since 2017 when my mom passed because there was a robbery in her whole retirement community. This guy who said he was working for the boiler company was actually stealing jewelry from and they caught him, and so I had a restitution check of like $16 every month.
Really?
Yeah, and my sister does too.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're paying.
That's good.
Yeah.
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 Okay, the next budget would be the forestry budget.
Page 90.
What's that one, Mark? 90.
90.
Okay, the first item in there, the equipment maintenance and repair, we're increasing that by $500. That's based on need. The tree removals and care increases by $5,500. This work is contracted out to Johnson Tree Care. A lot of that, the bigger the tree, the more it costs. If they have to take care of a tree that's in with the power lines, that's an added cost. So they are quite busy with our right-of-way trees. If they're not in power lines and they're smaller diameter, our crew will take care of it. Our cost is not reflected in that line item. So this is strictly contracted service. And the brush pickup is increasing by $3,156. Again, this is a split with the stormwater utility, and that's strictly based on the Barnes contract for brush collection. Any questions for forestry? Okay. Solid waste would be the next budget.
Mark, I don't have those pages if you have them.
159, or 156.
Yeah, if we're anticipating that Nancy will ask the same question,
Yes.
could you maybe address that, because the rest of these are all utility related, right? Or
154.
just like what, out of the non-utility things, what would you have been looking to cut if the referendum had not passed?
What I would offer up for city council to consider cutting would probably be the yard waste service program, and probably the brush collection program. Over the past 4 to 5 years, we've made the cuts in various line items of smaller amounts, and if we were to have to cut, again, with the referendum failing to meet operational budget needs, we would have to look at bigger ticket items. So over the past 4 or 5 years, we've taken care of the lower cost items that we could, based on what I was being told by Mark and Neil. We would need significant cuts, and those two are general fund items that if we need a big chunk, those would
have been.
Yep, so.
And the yard waste, meaning the bins,
We would close the gate and
Close
lock
it.
it. Yep.
So people would have to take their yard waste elsewhere.
They would have to contract for private services, or I believe the landfill has a recycling center for
Yeah.
leaves and grass and things like that. Yeah. But, I think it's like 37 or 38,000 for the yard waste services in the budget as a whole. But like, we were looking at significant
Sure.
services that need to be cut.
What about like brush pickup and things like that, leaf pickup?
Well, the yard waste services, that includes leaf collection, so that would be.
So
that would be
leaf
cited as
collection
well.
would have also
Yeah.
been eliminated.
Well, based on
Yeah.
what you would all
Sure,
consider.
sure, yeah.
I don't have that.
Right, but
authorization.
that's what you were thinking, would have needed to be cut.
Right. And brush collection, that's contract-based, so we'd have to open the contract. I'm sure Attorney Cole would probably have to get involved with that. And we do 4 collections a year, so maybe that's reduced down to 2.
Yeah.
Whatever the directive is, through you, through Neil, that's what we would look at. There are other items besides those 2, but those are the 2 biggest ones that, you know, if we had to reduce a significant amount, that's where we'd probably start.
Yeah.
Just obviously, I mean, we're, certainly, hopefully, we're starting to notice a common theme in some of these responses. That there's just not, I'll call it low-hanging fruit, I guess, in terms of
Right.
what it would take to kind of revisit some of these things. It was simply a matter of, at some point, it just comes down to either actually cutting services. So most of any of the cost savings measures would actually directly result in a cost of services. And obviously, certainly, I guess I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for the rest of the staff, but obviously, when we just went through the referendum, when we were promising to maintain services as part of our expense, that's, that take that pretty seriously, and I'm sure residents do too. So it's just a matter of, when we get down and we can go through each one, we talk about, cutting $500 in fuel or reducing, a training budget or a professional development budget by $500. It's just not moving the needle essentially on that. And
Sure.
so it just obviously just wanted to remind folks that you guys as a council and as elected officials have been and department heads have been very, very focused on holding the line on a lot of these items for a considerable amount of time before I got here. Even.
Right.
So it's just a matter of, there really is not a lot of, there is no fat. Also, there really isn't in any of these budgets. We're actually at a point where most of the cuts that would be pursued are either achieved through either reductions in staff or reductions in service.
Right.
So just,
Right.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and certainly as somebody who's been on the council for 8 years, I appreciate that. I know we've spent I've written it dozens of times in social media before the referendum that we're down to bare bones, but I also think that it's really, not that this is, YouTube watching all the time or on Netflix or something, but I think it's really important for our public to hear our professional staff talk about the fact that they don't have, fluff anywhere, and if they had to, that they would have cut directly as opposed to just seeing it on a slide.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's definitely beneficial
It really is.
to ask the question.
If they know what would have been cut if they
Right.
hadn't passed the budget.
Right.
right. So I have a question, Dan, related to the yard waste, and this may seem like an odd one, but since I'm a fairly frequent person to the dumpsters, don't we have cameras over there?
We have a yard waste police officer, maybe?
We do have cameras. I think it was down for a while. I believe it's repaired. But we are able to catch illegal dumpers. There was a time prior to us having cameras where washing machines would show up, tires, you name it.
Yeah.
We would show up to work in the morning and we would have a fresh pile of bulk item waste. And that's why we installed the camera.
Right.
So when we do get illegal dumpers, we are able to see license plates,
Yeah.
make, model of vehicles. Our police department is a great partner. They do contact the party that has done the illegal dumping, and they give them an option. Either you pay the fine, or you get to come back and pick up your stuff and take it with you. And I think we've had 100% compliance with people coming back to pick up their stuff. That even in,
Somebody's dumped a whole truck full of brush. How the heck did they get that back out of the
well,
dumpster?
we have had that.
You
And
have?
they have come back and they dumpster dove and picked their brush. So the cameras come in pretty handy,
Good.
so.
There's several people that have, and I thought you had a camera over there, but I didn't know if we actually then referred them to police or how
Right.
we handle it, so it's helpful to
Yeah.
know.
And you know, seeing as though people do watch these meetings, you know, I'm going to put it out there. We have cameras that will catch you on the north end of the building, central part of the building, and the south end of the building.
Yeah,
We are able to follow vehicles depending on where they're at.
yeah.
I'm definitely putting that out there.
Yeah, like next
Just be-
spring when you reopen, that'd be a great thing to put out.
Let's just say, loosely translated, there's compelling evidence when
Yes.
we catch you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we know it was you.
Yeah.
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 And the thing is, it's just, when we have illegal dumpers, it's not fair to you all, it's not fair to
No,
the
that's
rest
right.
of Monona
Right.
citizens. So the cameras are installed basically to hold those accountable who have done it, and I think we have darn near, I think, 100% compliance with people coming back to pick their stuff.
That's
So,
great.
Would assume they're a little embarrassed.
Yeah,
I would hope
yeah,
so, yeah.
yep, so,
Well, I know
That
at
might
one
be a
point, there was a
perfect
couch down by the
location.
dumpster over here, right off the corner of Winnequa and Nichols. Somebody just left it next to the dumper one night, I guess, and,
really.
yeah.
Okay.
That might be a perfect location for Public Works dog. Just.
There we go. There we go.
Good idea.
Having him bark is better than alarm,
And
yeah,
you let,
absolutely
and you
right.
let Son of Jacob go.
Isn't that the old, didn't there used to be like junkyard dogs?
Junkyard
Isn't that
dog,
the
man,
whole
exactly,
point?
yeah, for security, that's right.
Junkyard dog, exactly.
I can't wait to see the budget initiative coming through the end.
Are you giving me authorization to get a pet, a dog at the shop? Outstanding.
Give me 50%, like, yeah.
I will be back with a
Will
purchase
help.
order.
Is there, my other question, just related to the, is just related to the garage, or is the new lift that all installed and operating fine?
Yes, yes. Everything is in, everything is functional. We are now able to lift big, heavy vehicles.
Nice.
The one that we did take out, we recently sold at auction, and I believe we got back what we paid for it.
Wow.
Really?
No,
Sale, I think that's what Jeff was saying.
Oh, my gosh.
That's
So-
amazing.
After
Yeah.
how many
It's
years?
inflation.
Uh,
And how old
20
was that?
He was like 22 years old, something like that. So, but there are, I think at this auction, people from off the street can come in
Sure.
and take part. So there's a lot of mechanics who do things out of their house or out of their own shop.
Sure.
So something like this would come in real handy for
And they're not lifting heavy vehicles, they're lifting
medium
cars,
size.
so-
Yeah, they're not
pickup
lifting
trucks,
Right.
things like
trucks.
that. So,
But now that you have the lift, you are able to repair your own trucks. Whereas before, wasn't that the whole problem? Like without the lift, if the truck broke, you had to send it
More
out
of
for
it.
repair.
for items that that our mechanic is certified to repair, but if it's warranty items, if it's bigger ticket items, we'll
Yeah.
take that right to the manufacturer.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we do have the capability to put the trucks in the air now,
Yeah, that's cool.
so, yeah. I guess I would just want to touch on something that Alder Moore mentioned before. You know, with the referendum that Monona just went through, staff has, over the past 4 or 5 years, looked at our budget line items. We've reduced where we could. I think there are other cities that have done referendums recently where, I don't know if they went through the same process that we did for the last 4 or 5 years, where there was really nothing left to cut. So if there are citizens of Monona watching, it wasn't just Public Works, it was every department that worked on their budget for the past 4 or 5 years. We were bare bones. So with this referendum passing, all city staff and city council definitely thanks the Monona residents for helping us out. So
Yeah.
now we can get back to performing the work we do better. We have a little bit more funding to do a little more work. But we have been cutting, and we are very appreciative of the passing of the referendum, so.
Here, here.
Agreed. Sorry, I have,
no-
can I just
okay,
ask one
I'm
more
sorry.
question? Because it's also come up on social media. Do we have a leaf truck down right now?
Well, we've actually had 2 different trucks down in the last 2 weeks, but we have all 3 trucks up and running.
Okay.
Our great mechanic again, I think within a day or 2, he has had both trucks up and running.
That's fantastic.
So we are full speed.
Okay, great. It just, there was chatter on social media over the last couple of days about, my leaves have been setting out, for a couple of weeks. Does anybody know what's going on? And I think it was probably.
Yeah.
We have made several rounds.
Yep. I've seen
And
them.
we're in that heavy time of year right
Yep,
now.
Yeah.
exactly.
You know,
I've
so-
seen it multiple
I was
times.
gonna say, I've seen them and I hear them,
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
I noticed somebody on social media was complaining about their brush not being picked
Yep.
up.
Right,
so
and then
they're past the
fortunately,
brush
there were
time.
some
Yeah,
other
we're
residents
past that,
said,
yeah.
check the schedule, here's the
Right,
schedule.
right,
Goes to the
right.
schedule. All right, so,
So-
yeah,
Yep.
It's not a fast process if you want them to be thorough.
yeah.
It's,
Right.
they are intentional about trying to pick up as much as they can.
Yeah, they really are.
What, they
When they
move
go
a
by.
mile an hour, don't they? So
About
that's-
1 mile an hour.
Yeah.
And they can only hold 25 cubic yards, and they have to go
Yeah.
and dump, so.
Yeah.
Right, okay, well, good.
So, okay. Next budget would be the stormwater utility budget.
How about solid waste?
Oh, that's right. I have it circled. We haven't talked about it.
154.
Thank you.
So the recycling services is contract-based. Our increase of $3,452 is based off 2,691 units. I think the narrative, I might have 4 more units in there. That is strictly based on the contract. The yard waste services is increasing by $7,900, and that's based on program costs for disposal. So price increases through Royal Container and at Purple Cow. That's where those increases are. As for refuse collection, $303,545 was requested to provide service to the 2,691 units. An additional $23,000 is allocated for 2025 only to catch up for the lost rebate revenue. It's a one-time adjustment.
Yeah, so last couple of years, our fund balance in the, it still has its own separate fund. I don't know if you remember, we used to get money through a rebate, and that kind of tanked on us towards the end. And this is to make our fund balance back to 0. So just kind of a one-time catch-up fee. Otherwise, we would be carrying a loss until forever.
Because part of the Pelletieri agreement is we don't get the rebate, right?
Right, and that was a little volatile towards the end with
Yeah.
the old, was it Waste Management?
Well, I think it was the international market.
Yeah.
They just were not buying up the recyclables
Right.
anymore.
So,
So, yeah.
Can you guys do a quick?
Sure.
Dan, can you just talk about how the experience with Pelletieri has been in general? Here for this, almost, how long we've been with them now?
January 1st will be 1 year.
Okay.
And Leah can, if she wants to offer any words, I know she takes a lot of the phone calls from residents and whatnot, but in my experience, we've seen 100% changeover with quality of service, efficiency with Pelletieri. Their customer service, I believe, is unmatched in the industry. Whenever there is an issue that comes forward, what I love about Pelletieri is they have cameras all around their truck. And it's been proven 100% of the time that the issue is not Pelletieri's fault. We used to get 10, 20, 30 complaints a week. Yes, well over, I mean, if you were to count up all the complaints we received in 23, in 2022, it would probably be 800, 900, 1,000.
They missed my house at least 10 times.
They would,
Yeah.
entire streets were missed.
Yeah, my house was missed often.
Right.
Yeah, does that happen? a lot?
So, since Pelletieri has taken over, we might get one every 3 weeks. Wow. If that. A lot of the complaints that have come in have been due to vehicles parking in front of carts, things like that. But the complaints are we don't hear of them if they are there. So it's, I know as far as the front office staff who answers the phones, they have a lot more time to do other things now because prior
Yeah.
to Pelletieri,
Yeah,
the
Take
bulk of their,
$1,000 off their.
right, yeah.
the bulk of their Tuesdays and Wednesday was dealing with garbage collection issues. So,
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
interesting.
I appreciate that, Dan, and
Yeah.
I think that's just, that's one of, I think, one of the better stories of 2024 in terms of
Yes.
going that way, in terms of customer service, and
Yeah.
it's really been, like I said, I mean, I guess night and day, really, between
night and day. Yeah.
what the quality of service that we've ended up getting,
Yeah.
so.
That's great.
Any other questions for solid waste? Okay. Now we have the stormwater utility budget.
It's 157.
Okay, outside services decreases by $900, and that's based on need. Our fuels and additives is increasing by 1,000. We were under budget there for the stormwater utility. The adaptive management fee increases by $1,016, and that's, we were receiving a credit the past few years, and that expires, so we're back to a normal rate moving forward. Our NR 216 expenses increases by $1,200, and that's based on the required expenses of the program.
Could
The
you
other,
say more about that? Like, what are those? Is it in there?
should be in the narrative.
Oh, sorry.
This is Brad's line item to monitor, but basically, we have the MAM swap, it's the Stormwater Consortium group that we're part of, and permit fees. That's the bulk of our costs, that's $6,000. Our MS4 reporting, that's for the state, that's $500. We are required to do a public education component and outreach as part of our permit program, that's $2,200. So that kind of, it's all kind of government related for that line item.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Street sweeping disposal, that's the other half of what we had in the general fund, that's decreasing by $500. And also the brush pickup increases by $3,156. Any questions for that budget? Okay. Next budget would be the water utility. I-
162, yep.
Excuse me?
Just said 162 for
Okay.
page number correct.
I did break this up a little bit better this year. For me, anyway, it was hard to read with no spaces between the bullet points with the various line items, so I hope it's easier for you to read as well. The first item would be in the pumping expense portion of the budget, our power purchase increases by $4,000. That's based on the planned rate increase. The pumps at the pump houses, they use a lot of power. They're big motors, so that's why you see a bigger increase with the power purchase. The water treatment expense, the maintenance of water treatment equipment increases by $500, and that's based on need. Maintenance of reservoir and towers budget, reservoir and tower materials and repair, we're decreasing that by $11,000. That's because we had a one-time charge here in 2024. We had to do our state-required inspections of the reservoirs and water tower. We don't have to do that in '25. In maintenance of mains, our outside services account decreases by $2,000. That line item covers expenses related to water main break repair. The mains material and repair account does increase by $1,000 based on need. Under maintenance of services, maintenance of outside services decreases by $1,500 based on need. The cross-connection control services decreases by $1,000 based on 2025 pricing. That's a contracted service for HydroCorp. We contract with them to help us meet our DNR requirements for backflow prevention surveys of the commercial industries or commercial facilities in town. We have to inspect a certain number every year and report that to the DNR, so they take care of that for us. The service material and repair account decreases by $1,000 based on need. In the maintenance of meters outside services increases by $1,500 based on the large meter testing schedule we have for 2025. The meter annual software and fees increases by $5,000 next year, and that's based on contractual increases for the Beacon meter fee program. There's about 5 or 6 different fees that are part of that. In the maintenance of telemetry system, outside services decreases by $500 based on need. In administrative and general expense, the certification education, we are increasing that by $2,000 for next year. We have 2 new operators that need to attend the educational classes and get certified by the DNR. The miscellaneous general expense decreases by $5,500 based on need. And fuels and additives decreases by $1,000 based on need. Any questions for the water utility?
I
Okay.
think this really illustrates how complicated it is running a water utility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next budget, and our final budget for Public Works would be the sanitary sewer. First up would be the operations and maintenance, MMSD disposal service. We are increasing that by $93,000 for next year. And that's based on the expected rate increase from Madison Met. Our fuels and additives decreases by $1,000 for next year. Under the maintenance of lift stations, lift station outside service increases by $1,000 to account for contract increases for generator maintenance. And the lift station material and repair increases by $1,500 for next year, based on need. Under maintenance of mains and laterals, mains outside services, we're seeing a big increase for that next year, $17,000. We had to go to a new contractor beginning this year. We did get cost proposals from 5 companies to perform this service for us. So this was the cheapest of the 5. New pricing is for cleaning and televising of the sewer mains. The maintenance provider we had is no longer providing the annual cleaning service to the city. Under customer accounts and expenses, supplies and expense increases by $2,000 to account for increases for support in the billing process. And the last item, under admin and general expense, miscellaneous general expense increases by $500. That's dedicated to the random drug testing program. Any questions for sewer?
Yeah, I have one. You talked before about I&I and stopping a lot of leaks. Is there still a lot more to do in that area to get maybe the amount of water we put through the sewage system down?
Addressing I&I will always be an ongoing concern for us. We still have probably about 2 to 3 projects in front of us yet to address I&I. But with the televising program that we have, we'll be watching for I&I sources every year. And as we get enough identified, we will bring a project forward to do main lining. We will have lining coming up with the road reconstruction project that is slated for 2026. So that'll be our next big lining project. In 26, I'll be coming back with a request for more funding to do more review, to put together another capital project for more lining. The goal is to reduce clear water entry into the sanitary sewer system. Because when that clear water goes to the treatment plant, it's water that is just it doesn't need treatment, but we pay for it anyway.
Right,
So
yeah.
the goal is to reduce our INI as best we can. So it's an ongoing effort.
Is a lot of that to do with the age of the facilities and the infrastructure?
The majority of the pipe we have is concrete pipe. The pipe itself is generally in good condition. What we see is offset pipes where the seams are. That's just due to movement in the ground. So you might have an inch offset. You might have a minor separation. So the lining will close those gaps. But that's mainly what we see. And then sometimes where the lateral attaches to the main, there might be infiltration at the connection. So there is a capability to line that portion as well to help reduce that INI at the connection.
Do you foresee us being able to get that price and that amount of water going in infiltration down to where it could affect our costs? Or are we just trying to keep up with what we're doing now?
No, the projects that we've done, the two lining projects that we've done, what we paid to line, I think was roughly 175, 185 each. We have seen that reduction in the sanitary sewer billing that we received from MMSD prior to 2024.
Okay.
But every new year, nature doesn't stop doing its job. Earth keeps moving, so, there's new sources of INI every year. And that's why we have to keep maintaining that program of televising our sewer mains. I believe, moving forward, we'll probably have a lining project every probably 4 years, just to keep addressing, areas that have offset main or, things like that. But we have seen, and Mark can probably confirm this, prior to 2024, our sanitary sewer budget for MMSD disposal, those costs have gone down. Now they're starting to go back up because of the charges that we're seeing from MMSD.
Right.
But our INI is only up slightly. So those projects paid for themselves with the reduction in cost for disposal, for treatment costs.
Because the INI goes on, and it's part of the flow calculation, correct?
Right.
Part of the what?
There's various calculations when they determine their amount they bill us.
Oh.
One, we give them all our usage, and then they have their flow meters and other stuff, and that's where that would have got in, through their flow meters.
Flow.
So it's not part of our, so it doesn't match up to what our charges would have been.
Okay.
So let's say we send, oh geez, I wish I had this data in front of me.
Million gallon.
Yeah, so let's say we take 1 million gallons, I think quarterly we give them, let's say, 75 million gallons. With lining, we were able to bring that down to about 60 million gallons per quarter. So that's it's roughly 7 million gallons that you don't have to pay in the flow charge. And then there's BOD, there's CBOD, there's phosphorus, all these other charges that you don't have to pay on cleaning that water because it's out of the system.
Right.
So just by reducing 7 million gallons in a quarter, you're able to pay for that lining project, and we were able to pay for it in 2 years. So that's the benefit of staying on top of INI, is you keep those treatment charges lower and manageable.
Okay, so there's real paybacks.
There is definitely a real
Sure.
payback.
Yeah.
So is there any sense in accelerating the lining projects, or do you have to wait for the right opportunity to really be able to maximize it?
Basically, it comes down to the capital budget funding for the city. It's priority based.
Yeah.
We can come back with a lining project every other year or every third year. We will spend a year reviewing the tapes, identifying the areas, and putting a project manual together. but probably about every 3 years is ideal,
Hmm,
is realistic,
okay.
so.
Yeah, part of it comes down to debt load, and how much
Right.
debt the sewer utility
Right.
can take on at one time, so.
Yeah, it's just that if there's that kind of fairly quick payoff,
But Dan knows that.
I know he knows, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Some of the time it's us, not Dan.
But we actually had the data that showed that. I think I provided that to council last year at this time.
Yeah.
It was significant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
But
Yep.
even if we got it down to zero, it's great that we're, working on that. The bigger issue, or another issue, is the rates keep going up.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
8, 9, 10%.
Right.
Here.
Well, I'm just, thinking in terms of what we can do, what's in our control.
Right. Yeah.
It would definitely be worse if we weren't
Yeah.
taking care of what we were
Right.
taking care of.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
The success of those 2 lining projects that we had, 52% of the flow that we provided to MMSD in a year was related to I&I.
Yeah,
We reduced that down to 4%
it was amazing.
with those 2 projects alone.
Wow,
Yeah.
So the goal is to keep it below 10% if we can,
right, okay,
so.
okay.
I
So
mean,
we're-
that's my goal. I mean,
Right.
I don't know what the industry standard is, but I believe if you keep it below 10%, you're doing pretty good with I&I,
Got it,
so.
thank you.
In capital, we have 2 large projects going on right now that are taking up kind of the importance. It's the underground, and the lift station, whatever the one over by Mary's, what is it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we are converting 2 lift stations to a modern-style submersible lift station
Yeah,
project.
and they're expensive.
Yeah, pumping station.
Yeah,
Um,
so that's priority right now instead of the.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
There's also only so much work that Public Works can do to
Right.
prepare for these things every year, too.
It's me and Brad.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm thinking of Brad's time.
We average
Right,
about
right?
20, well, we propose about 22 to 25 projects a year.
Dang.
I think we end up with like 16 to 18, 19 maybe.
That's a lot. And each one of those, you need to manage the engineers that we
Right.
hire and
Right.
everything else. It's,
Yep. So
Lord.
Brad and I, we kind of team up and tackle that together, so.
No, it's great work, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your diligence. I'm just,
Sure.
It is interesting though, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
to learn
processing
about
it for
yeah.
myself.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions for Dan?
Okay.
Only a comment. I should have told you this so long ago. Some time ago, a friend of mine joined the Public Works Committee, and he and I were just talking at a holiday party, I think it was. And he just shared with me how absolutely surprised he was at how, I don't know the words he used, but he just couldn't get over how careful you were with money. Like, he just couldn't believe it that you were asking about a $500 expense, I think his example was. He goes, I can't believe he wouldn't just spend this money. Why is he asking us? It's only $500. It just goes to show how careful you are and how you really are very, very, very mindful of every dollar that is being spent.
I try.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, it's important. I mean, like I said at the start of my presentation, on the operating budget side of things, I've got $6 million I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
And another probably $4 million on the capital budget side. So we have a big responsibility in Public Works, and it's significant amount of money. That's your money that you're putting in my hands, and with Mark's help, I do the best I can, and I think I return the budgets pretty good every year, but you have to do it. I mean, it's important.
It's funny that you say that, Teresa, because I'm getting text right now from someone who's watching, who's a big fan of Dan's, like, for real. He's actually growing a fan base.
It's my only fan.
Gotta start somewhere.
I'll take the fans.
Gotta start
Usually
somewhere.
I get blasted
Yep.
with
Well, I
it,
gotta
so.
say that one of the things that I enjoy about the Public Works meetings oftentimes is when Bill and Dan or Brad, get into a discussion around some like this, the latest stormwater project that we were talking about, and it's like, you know, three geeks in their total happy place around stormwater, and everybody else in the room, and their eyes are glazing over, but for the three of them, it's like they're totally know exactly what they're talking
When you know you
about.
got the right people in the
Yeah.
right positions,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, there's some passion
Yeah.
there.
Well, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We appreciate all you do. All right, well, now we will move on to Neil.
All right.
I guess you want to start with the legislative on page 23.
I think we will, Mayor, that's what we're looking at. Want to point out, the Mayor had been proposing taking a look at legislative salaries on there, so you'll notice the increase from 24 to 25. There are some statutory deadlines that we have to deal with that would make it difficult to do this year. So we're probably going to be holding off on doing those, I think. So we are kind of evaluating, again, what other council salaries and what the mayor's salary are here in other communities. Dane County Cities and Villages Association actually does a good survey of that information. So that is something we're probably going to be bringing back and revisiting with council probably sometime in 2025 to see if there's interest in pursuing that. But right now, we don't feel it's going to be, the timing is not right to do that. The other thing that's also, and just for so everyone is clear, the requirement in statute is once if that increase is approved, it does not take effect until the next term. So you can't basically vote yourself an increase during your own term. So just interesting fact, though, I don't think a lot of people realize and understand on that. But that's in state statute, so you can actually approve that. But there's also some times in terms of when you actually have to have it in by.
Which is December 1st, so we
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
don't have time to.
And we verified that, and
act on it
Alderwood
yet.
brought that up, mentioned that.
Thank you, Alderwood.
We had a race
That was
between,
right.
we had a race between,
Right.
we had a race between Attorney Cole and the League of Municipalities, and Attorney Cole answered first, but the League of Municipalities answered correctly, so. So we're gonna pick on Attorney Cole when we see him again next time. So just that's really the only real change in that item.
So I suppose we could reduce that somewhat.
Yeah, I think we'll putting it back to 28.8 would probably be my recommendation on that one.
I do think it's something we should look at, though, because there haven't been any increases in at least
Well,
10 years. I
I
think.
was gonna say, I think I'm the only one that's been here. Unless
I
That's
got
gotten
it.
one?
You got-
But it was like the first or second year I was here.
Yeah.
It must have been the first time I was reelected,
Okay.
maybe.
And we are low.
$7 then?
And we are low compared to other communities. I mean, we are, there, again, we've taken a look at what other
Yeah.
positions are. So we'll certainly be kind of revisiting that and
So
updating
the
as we
earliest
go.
something would happen would be 26.
Yes.
Yes, after the April election is when you'd
Yeah.
see it. And that would only be the half of the people who were up for election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, takes a while.
Yeah, it does take a while to move it up. So it is
Yeah.
it is very regulated, so.
You're making it very difficult for us to line our pockets off the
Yeah.
taxpayers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one's gonna get rich in this one, especially if we go per hour on what you guys are doing,
Yeah.
so.
'Cause
Um,
even this change would be from, what, 400 a month, 480?
Were we going up to
What do we get?
6 or 650?
Around there, I think,
Yeah.
is what we're looking at, so, yeah, so, but again, so we'll be bringing that, probably bring something forward here sometime, in 2025
Yeah.
to revisit that one. There's a little bit, just a slight bump in professional development for legislative, again, it's if any meetings come up related to that, alders might want to take a look at, so, pretty straightforward. Any questions on legislative? Judicial, I'll hop down right into that one. Again, we've looked a little bit at, certainly all the professional, or the personnel items are there. Professional development was increased slightly. I think the judge has expressed some interest in wanting to see
Yeah.
the court clerk take on a little bit more training, possibly on that one. I do need to sit down and visit with her on that, so we probably will be trying to get a hold of her early next week just to go through this and make sure, see if she has any changes that she would like to see, but we believe this is probably in line.
It's all verified with her.
She already took a look at it?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Professional development went up because the old judge was not being charged for a certification because he was teaching a class, or they paid
Yeah.
for it, so.
Yeah, so,
New judges
so
now.
for both for the judge and for the
Yeah.
court clerk, yep. Any questions on judicial? Oh, the outside services, I did want to point out the $240, only going up to $540. That's for interpretation services.
What was that?
That's line, two outside services under
Oh, sure.
judicial, the 240 line. That is for interpretation services. We probably anticipate that to continue to increase.
Yeah.
But just wanted to identify that that was kind of what that was specifically there for. Any questions on judicial?
Yeah, just so you know, we do have the current one does speak Spanish, so does help.
The court clerk, right?
Elliot does.
Oh,
yeah.
that's
Yep.
nice.
Yeah, for conversational purposes,
Yeah,
absolutely. But
there's certain things.
not to
you
the
can't
point of
do.
actually for
Yeah.
legal representation and those
tricky,
kinds of
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
From a liability standpoint, not something we really
Yeah,
want to do.
yeah.
He does
So-
speak it though, which helps.
Yeah,
a
but he
ton.
does a great job in terms of even just helping at the front counter, to be honest, and certainly even outside of court-related issues.
That's
Elliot's a
great.
great resource, so. Hop down to legal, you'll see the significant increase in attorney fees, the retainer. We've just had a lot of stuff that we're throwing at Attorney Cole this last year. Really, certainly outside of, certainly there's things like ongoing litigation, we have to deal between Walmart and certainly with a particular homeowner in town, we've got, that's costing us significant funds. Other things, certainly development-related things, usually this comes from TIFs. If we have anything, so we have a funding source for those. There are other types of,
Any contract Jake might do, or,
you're right, certainly any types of reviewing that we need him to kind of take a look at is where we have a lot of his time to do that. And we, certainly as much as we all love Attorney Cole, try not to have him come to every meeting, since we don't have to pay him to be here by an hourly rate. So we do try to work with him on doing that. One thing we did implement this year with him is an actual rolling list of projects that he's working on for us, and we do review that about every other month, and just to kind of make sure that everything we have kind of an idea on really what he is all working on with us at this point, so.
I think one of our court cases right now, it's still ongoing, is what, 44,000, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
yep,
Just for one court case,
yeah.
which we won every appeal and everything.
Right, now it's going to the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
If they take it, but we'll see.
You talking about Walmart?
No, this is,
It's a building inspection.
Code enforcement
issue.
one. I believe it was the Kinsler case, I believe.
Yep.
Mark, are legal costs that Bill does related to development agreements,
That's all-
those
that's all
go through
allocated to
CDA,
each-
or it's allocated?
To use-
Okay.
If it's a TIF-related expenditure, it
Okay.
would go there. Correct.
We also are trying to make sure that we're, when possible, billing that to the developer.
Right.
If at all possible. So if there's something that we know we need them to do. So we're actually, I know Director Plowman's actually taking a look at that and working with Bill on that in terms of including language that identifies really any sort of professional services, including legal fees, financial analysis, planning, engineering, anything else related to that, because we have to ask for consulting services to help evaluate that. That's something that the developer is responsible for. So we are kind of working on improving our development agreements to kind of make that very, very clear, and including some things actually may possibly requiring an escrow fund to be allowed and that we can just draw from as those expenses come in, so. Any questions on legal?
Now executive,
Okay, move on to the executive.
27.
Yep. Again, I think pretty straightforward on this one. I will identify the personnel items. The only items that have changed slightly are newsletter expenses. That's gone up. That's right now, that's currently done through Constant Contact, I believe. Is that correct? We are actually looking at our own website that has some possibilities for some services that we may be able to use for that in the future, but we're still kind of evaluating whether or not we like the formatting and the actual graphics capability and so forth on that. So there's a possibility that may be a savings in the future, but for right now, we're leaving that as an $1,800 cost. Looking at down the other ones, just the one that's item, the executive office other, I think that's actually the line item that's probably paying for dinner tonight, for those kinds of things, in terms of just kind of general expenses that may come up, meeting related or other things that we don't have that. I would also point out the sustainability initiatives, that was actually used for, I think, I'm looking at Alder Rodemacher, did we actually use that for some of the grant matching this year? Did we use some of those funds? The sustainability initiatives, $393.
Like signs you buy from that, and down towards the bottom.
Yeah, and just general projects. So that is just a fund that they have available for different things.
Yeah,
You
stuff
have a
like that.
special project coming up.
Like a
next year.
recycling event,
Yep.
stuff like that, yeah.
Yep, exactly. So any questions? Again, pretty straightforward. Any questions on executive office?
Yeah, where was something I was about to ask and I forgot. Well, I guess it's not important because I can't even remember what I was going to say. Forget it. Yeah.
This is next assessment.
Yep.
Page 46.
46?
46, yep, it's pretty much just one line item. This is obviously a contracted service, if you always remember. We're working with Accurate Appraisal is our contractor. We've taken this because of the referendum, moving from just the market, using just market data to actually doing specific inspections to help verify those things. So that was a significant increase in cost, but it was something that seemed to be a priority when we established that contract and wanting to make sure that there was a little bit more active effort to verify assessment expenses for folks.
Do we have
So-
to amend the contract for that, or is it already?
We do not. Actually, I think that's already in there, is it,
It's
Mark?
in the contract.
It's already in,
Okay.
so,
Is that for a quarter of them per year, or?
Quarter
Okay.
per
correct.
year.
Any questions about that?
Actually, I remembered my question. There was a cost for the newsletter, the city newsletter. Is that just the software that's
constant
used?
That's the constant contact.
Right,
but Yep.
okay.
That's essentially the subscription fee.
Yeah,
for
got
for
it.
that service.
Okay.
Yep.
Which, do we use that constant contact account for other things too?
We do. We have multiple other, I think Parks and Rec, I believe, uses it. I think we have a few different departments are using that. So again, that's another reason we are looking at possibly trying to consolidate a little bit and maybe using the technology that's
Yeah.
available. And through our website, if possible, our newsflash and those types of things. But they're a little bit more limited in terms of the ability, I think, for formatting and some
Yeah,
of the things.
yeah. Next up is tourism,
Yep, I'm just gonna-
147.
Because I'm the guy with the access to the Zoom here, I'm gonna do a quick share screen here. Identify, it's this one? Yeah, oh, it didn't come up here, hold on here. I got it. The right one here, I think it is. This one, just wanted to kind of go through some of these just highlights of last year. So on the screen here, if we can be able to see that. Just wanted to kind of recap what in 2024 and what the grant awards were for 24. So folks, just, I'm not going to go through those one at a time.
Bigger?
Let's see. Hold on here.
Like
I
the,
have
yeah,
my-
where would
hold
that
on
be?
down here. See,
There you go. Thank you.
there you go.
Perfect.
So again, our primary two expenditures are the actual tourism entity contract we do with MESBA, and then actually the actual grant awards themselves. So this was the first year we actually had a financial obligation essentially with MESBA for doing the services that they provide. They've actually hired a part-time staff person to help assist with reviewing and implementing a lot of the marketing programs that are involved in this. These are just kind of a list of the grant awards that were made this last year. Then there's actually a pending one for 2025 already. We just made it a note there. The one note is we actually did, for 2025, we are recommending that we kind of merge all of MESBA's grants into their tourism entity contract. So we don't have 4 or 5 different applications and the tourism entity contract to manage. We're simply putting the requirements all in their entity contract as kind of just a general marketing line item for their budgeting. So
Does that include the Destination Madison?
that does include the Destination Madison, absolutely. So that was probably the main change again from this year is again, because otherwise we were having like 2 or 3 applications from them every quarter. And it just was making it a little bit, this makes it a little easier to manage. They still have reporting requirements. They still have some other things. The increase in cost between the two though was, what is going on here? Jeez.
Time to go.
Yeah, what the heck here?
It's like a disco.
It's just trying to stop. There we go.
Wow.
Yeah, now Mark's dancing. Yeah, geez.
Oh, I like that.
It's like a disco.
The main change in that was actually paying for some additional staff time for MESBA to put towards some of the marketing efforts that they were doing, as well as they're probably looking at doing, possibly getting some office space, so paying for a portion of the office space for this person. So we tried to kind of identify those items there. Projection is essentially looking at the same amount of money that Mark's projecting the same amount for next year as this year. So I think we're looking at, similar type of programs. We certainly have enough in there to kind of proceed with 1 or 2. And Mark, I can't remember, I know you just told me the fund balance on.
So basically, like right now,
Yeah,
at the end of the year, we'll have 250,000, rounding, give or take a couple dollars, of unspent money carried over. So you take the 400 plus the 250, you have basically 650. But then 250,000 is already accounted for Mezzo. So really 400,000 for everything
Yeah.
else.
Crazy.
Follow the math. And if you looked at the thing up there, did not have the Harry Whitehorse, if somebody was asking, that was approved in 2023.
That was a 23-year grant.
But it was,
Yeah.
happened in 24.
Correct.
So if somebody's looking like, why isn't that in there? 'Cause it's
Mm-hmm. It'll be back in 25.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because the next one is,
So Mark, how much are we taking for the city portion now? I know there's 70-30 or 80-20 or,
It's 70/30. It was.
so we're not, was that the grandfathered in amount?
We
or
were
is
using the
this-
grandfather, but now he's past that. So
So
now
this,
we're,
we
we're
get
gonna-
more money by taking the
Correct.
70-30?
Yep.
Yeah, so any new hotel will be 70/30
Okay.
that goes in.
But we're not there yet.
No, we are there.
We
So-
are there.
Yeah, we're past it, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, then why is the rate the same?
That's the one I was talking about, we had to come back with a budget amendment.
Oh.
I don't remember if you remember Thursday night or Tuesday night I was talking about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
They offset the library stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, not necessarily.
That's what
It offsets it here.
Right.
But you know,
There's
yeah,
20,000 to figure out in the library.
the net effect is, yeah.
so I have a question. The short-term rental program, does that, it seems to me that's visitors, that's not going to be, does that have its own separate budget?
It does not. They simply, their room tax collection is essentially the same as what the hotels do. So it's all the same.
Right,
Within
so
the
do
same
we, given that we're now collecting considerably more fees than we used to be, or I assume we are, in terms of application fees and room tax fees and everything else, and we're identifying more places that maybe we slipped through the cracks before, does that mean that our hotel,
No, it's a great
No.
question, Alder. Actually, we're down about 10 units since we started evaluating this. So several of them have moved to either remove their listing or they have expanded their rental listing to the 30-plus days, so it doesn't qualify as a short-term rental. So number one, we have lost, actually decreased the number when we started. I think we were more like 42, 43.
Okay.
We're down about 10 or 12, I think, at this point.
okay,
We're also finding that the amount of time being spent in terms of enforcement and so forth is a little more than we were anticipating. So we'll have, kind of, once we kind of get through, I think before we go with the applications for this next year, we're trying to actually build a little bit more of an accounting of exactly what we think the staff time costs and so forth have
Right.
been, to see exactly kind of where we're at. It's very likely we may be coming back and requesting a higher fee at some point for that.
right.
Simply because of the amount of inspection work. I think I know I shared with the mayor, and I might have shared with you, Alder, that obviously when we were doing, there's certainly the upfront application things, which I think are getting pretty streamlined, and we're going to have that part down pretty well. But then there's the coordination of inspections between both our building inspection staff and then our fire department staff. That takes a couple of efforts to do that. We've had a couple of units that have not responded to saying, hey, we know you're advertising, you need a permit. So we have actually pursued, we're actually using Attorney Cole to start pursuit enforcement and citation actions on those, which obviously could be significant because we've notified them saying you're subject to up to $1,000 a day fine since January or July 1.
Right.
So here we are in November. So we've really been trying to give the benefit of the doubt on folks if they're communicating, they're working with us and getting information. We've continued to do that, but it's been a little longer, than on some of those than we've had. So we are seeing probably, at best case, I think scenario, Alder, probably a neutral run on that because we've lost those 10 different units. I think we've only had like one or two inquiries on new units that we are taking on that, yeah, so.
So, but you had also talked at one point, because it was much more of a time suck on staff, the whole idea of like hiring a contractor or something like that to deal with it, right?
Yeah, I think once we kind of have a good solid number on, I think, what the impact on staff time and an actual
Right.
cost incurred would be, that very well may be something we are looking for a recommendation
Okay.
back.
So we're, as far as that, we're on track to make 24,000 this year. It's in the general fund because that's where all the people's times are, the clerk and Doug's. As far as the rental income coming in, the 8%, I was just looking at it a couple of days ago. The Airbnbs, Expedia, and all, their revenue is down a little bit, what we received in the past. But it's only probably been a net effect about 10 to 15,000, so the overall. So,
And is part of that because we have fewer of them?
I mean, I don't know if it's the, you know,
That would be my assumption
Yeah.
there, but you certainly need to dive, do a little bit deeper dive and kind of.
yeah,
take a
the
look
third
at that,
quarter
so.
was down, but that's also when they would have had like CrossFit and stuff too. So a lot of times it's dependent on the activities. I mean, lost
Sure.
CrossFit, how much was that really
Right,
impacted?
if something's canceled, then.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have a good idea, honestly. Is it, or some of these people really paying us too, is the other side.
Right.
So I guess I do want to just like highlight, I guess, one key component that's changing in terms of all of those grant awardees that we have I had listed on the screen previously. One, kind of a little bit of a change in operation in terms of how we review and evaluate tourism requests is that we are kind of shifting a lot of these over to what we're referring to as hotel sponsorships for the events. So in exchange for a negotiated value of X dollars from the commission, the applicant hosting the event agrees to advertise our hotels and our local short-term rentals at the event, on their website, in their application materials and so forth. So whatever they negotiate that value to be, we sign the grant agreement. As long as they follow and implement those advertising items and they advertise those to us, they are basically able to use that revenue wherever they feel appropriate. So we're definitely, the objective we are trying to achieve is the advertising of the hotels and recruiting overnight stays, which we feel is more directly in line with the spirit of the statute. But then that also allows when we are actually, I think, Mark might have mentioned earlier in terms of what we're trying to do, and the chief doing a better job of billing for our services. That allows, some sort of revenue stream at the discretion of the applicant to be able to use some of that revenue to help them kind of pay for those services. So, but it is entirely at the discretion of the applicant. So again, I guess I should back up and say, we are not able to directly access those funds to pay for services, for city services directly.
Like for our police.
For like
costs.
police overtime or other kinds like this. So this is a little bit of a way to kind of help with those things and still be able to appropriately bill for those activities when the city's involved with those.
Questions, anyone? All right, well, is that it for you, Neil, I
I
think?
believe so.
Mark, it's on to you.
All right.
Finance is page 32, if that's where you're starting.
Yeah, finance, there's not much activity increases. Mainly, my 10% went to the audit contract, because that's going up every year, in service contracts are the two things that went up for me. Have any questions on finance?
Guess not.
Question, please.
Transit,
Transit, yeah, so that's the very last page. Page 181. So, just so this is as you're aware, it's a brand-new contract. General property tax number is only a couple of dollars more than last year's, but please take in consideration that if we would have had first student, that number would be probably $10,000 more, or $10,000 more. Instead of 128, it would have been more likely 138, so that was where we're talking about the savings, or 140. So this will be the first year starting March 1st.
and we're going to be seeing more from Madison Metro coming soon?
Yeah,
in
we're
terms
meeting
of
with them next
promotion
Wednesday.
and that kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand, what is a fare box revenue?
Fare box revenue is just the money you walk onto the bus.
Just fares for paying a
What
regular
you pay
rider,
to
pay a
ride the
fare to
bus.
ride the bus.
But why,
We get the money.
why do we
it's like-
get it?
Why
Why
do we
is
get it?
it, why is it our revenue if we don't own the,
It's just the way the contract is
that's
set
the way
up.
the contract is set up? Okay,
So if it's in Monona, and you're in Monona, and they put
Okay.
it on, they have that. and
Okay.
They have a tracking system for that. I think next is Parkland.
That's quite a big increase, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You have to add, I think, add up several things.
Parkland fees, I think, is on page,
Is it 153 maybe?
yeah. I'm just gonna, this is really probably more Jake's fund. Probably was open on- So Parkland fees is, when a developer comes in each additional housing unit is added, they have to pay a certain dollar amount, like 1,500 right now. So this is where this gets accumulated. It's 2023, that 102,000, if you see that number, that is related to North Point. In 2024, the estimated 250, that's related to Besa and the Bloom. Since we haven't spent any money together, just add those two numbers together, and that's what your fund balance is right now. Just in case you're wondering.
Is there a particular way that money has to be spent?
Since it's not an impact fee, it just, I mean, you're going to want to spend it in the parks.
Right,
But yeah.
but it doesn't have to be in park
Doesn't-
acquisition, it doesn't have.
No, it doesn't have to be, no. You really-
Anything park related.
Yeah,
You can't do park structures, right?
right.
Yeah.
The impact fees, you can't do park structures.
This
Oh,
kind of
with
fee you
this, you
can?
can't?
Yeah, because it's not, it's a different subject. Impact fees,
Okay.
wait a minute.
I thought there was-
Walking path or something
I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
But I know we used it for Dream Park,
For the shelter or for the
for the
playground?
shelter. Maybe
It would be for improvements for new things.
I'll take a look into
Yeah.
the rules. We haven't used it since then, so.
So did,
Years old,
sorry, did you say the 250 was Besa
Capital costs.
and,
Besa and Bloom.
In the blue.
and Bloom? Okay.
Expand or improve.
What was North Point?
Yeah, that's the
They were
120.
the
It's
102,
102.
414.
Oh, 23, got
Yeah.
it.
It's not a permit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Things come
As
in.
soon as you pay for your permit, you have to
Yeah.
pay that.
Okay.
So Bloom just paid that recently, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
This is an
Yeah.
estimate, so yeah, that's basically what it is.
Any questions about the Parkland Fund? Back to
just-
Jen, I'm
It's just,
sorry.
it's just an interesting, again, the social media chatter, people complaining about development, and all these people are going to be using all of our parks, and then, they talk about the impact of all these. they-
Yeah.
This is just something people don't, the average person has no idea
That is true.
about Parkland fees.
Jake is very familiar with Parkland fees.
Yeah.
He asks every staff meeting, he goes, did they pull their permit yet?
Yeah.
So,
And Mark, I'm not sure what page you start at with general government.
Yeah, it's 48 for insurance.
Where are we? Which one?
48.
general government on 48?
48,
Insurance
so it's
and
interest,
bonds.
it's a combination of a bunch of stuff, so it's
Okay.
insurance and bonds. This is our, workers' comp, property insurance. The workers' comp is going up. And we have quarterly meetings now with CIVMIC. We know that our multipliers going to have a little bit of effect. And we're also with the higher salaries, that increases that number too. So that was the reason for the increase. We did increase self-administration claims just recently. We've had more than usual.
What type of thing do we use that for?
So that'd be if we hit somebody, or if there's a pothole, or, I mean, not a pothole, but some type of,
Oh, yeah.
Something that's our fault that we are
something that's our
liable
fault, and we have to pay for it. Insurance claims, so that's ours insurance, since we have a $1,000 deductible. It's really right now being used for the police and fire for their claims. So if they get in an accident, we pay the $1,000, it's your $1,000 deductible, and then they pay the rest for auto insurance. So that's kind of the main one there.
Mark, did
can't
we
believe-
adjust that,
I
and I guess
can't
Leah, did we adjust that for squad cars? We were talking about like increasing the coverage level just because of the cost of the squads?
Right.
In terms of, not only the vehicle, but then the actual, I think we're trying to figure out whether or not we could actually increase it to cover the actual outfitting of the replacement.
Yeah, that's all been taken.
That's
Yeah.
all in there, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's in the number, but
Yeah,
it's, in the
okay.
insurance is
So
up to
before
date.
we were finding out, we were just getting the replacement value of the vehicle, which was like $40,000 or $50,000, but we
It
were,
was,
sometimes we're lucky we're able to pull the equipment off the old vehicle and reinstall it, but not always.
well, what
So-
happened was that, it was up in Monona, we had an accident, last year.
Uninsured guy, yeah.
Well, we hit somebody, a police officer hit somebody doing a U-turn, and it was, the vehicle was 4 years old, and Civic Insurance was only, nobody knew about it, everybody, we were at a meeting, and nobody knew that they only covered for full 100% for the first 3 years.
Oh.
And then after that, so they got, Civics is changing their whole auto insurance, and they weren't covering, add-ons, so that's why they changed their whole process, all because of our one accident. We found out we didn't get the full coverage,
Yeah.
and then they were at a meeting, and so we brought it up, and they brought it up, and it was, an incident happened, and it was us, and so everybody's like, nobody knew that, so.
Surprise, surprise.
It's been in their, I guess, their policies for years and years, but it's never been communicated to everybody.
Read that fine print.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's what ended up happening, so all the communities had to go back and redo it, and then so they're redoing how their methods and stuff like that.
Oh,
Make
wow.
sure, if you had the snow plow, that's the plow, was included, and the light bars, and so we had to go through and figure
Yeah.
all that stuff out.
Wow.
So, and, figure out what was important, put on it. We didn't want to overinsure either, so we,
Right.
it's a mix of what should be in there and what should not be in there.
I'm kind of surprised at the property and liability insurance not going up that much. Like, everybody I know, myself included, just have had their property insurance go through the roof this last year.
Yeah.
Like, people are complaining on social media. Did anybody else get a 27% increase on
Yeah.
there? And I got a 30-some-odd% increase on mine. Never had a claim in Maine. Like $700 increase.
Yeah, as you can see, ours went from 69 to 72, 74, up to 81. I don't know if you all know, we're part B own our insurance company. Civic is the, so it's all these municipalities that, under one big company. So, the majority of Dane County are in, except for like Madison. Pittsburgh's in there, Sun Prairie's in there, Middleton, they're all part of
And
it.
we're very selective. Other communities would like to be in there, but we're very selective about who we allow in, because obviously, you let somebody in who has a whole bunch of claims,
Yeah.
has a big problem, that affects the rest of us. So we're, actually, they do a nice job of kind of maintaining and managing that in terms of who they actually let into the consortium, so.
Interesting.
So get page 51, just one last thing, and this is going to go into some bigger discussion, I think. So there's one legal tax write-off, 20,000. So what this is, it would be like, assessment claims. So right now I have a low number for Walmart for 20,000, but that number, the difference would have to come out of fund balance. But that's where you go to court or you settle an assessment and we have to pay them back taxes or something to that effect. So that's what that is. Or it used to be before personal property, if you couldn't collect that, we'd have to write it off. They were small dollars, but I added up. So the next one is kind of the one I kind of want to talk about. This kind of affects kind of the big picture where we're at. So if you go other financing sources, uses, you'll see there's a transfer. And then you see there's this big contingency, 71,000.
800. This is related to the referendum.
Yeah, so this is all. So, as you know, part of that $3 million, part of it was the future years, 871,000. So that number is going in here. That's where that number is showing up in here. But I've kind of explained how this all works. If you go to this worksheet that was handed out.
Yep.
So legally, for the referendum, our base now is, we could go up to $8,374,022.
Mark, can you explain why that number is different than we've heard? Obviously, it said 9 to 12. Just explain how that's, why that's. the
That number
8.
is because of the way the state law is written, it includes your debt service. So if you add to what we're paying for debt service, that's where that 12 million.
What we had in the referendum.
Yeah,
includes
that's
our
where that
debt
$12 million.
service. Yeah.
They don't break out
Okay,
the
gotcha.
operating portion for, the way it makes it look worse.
So that's why it's titled, the total property tax, the operating levy on that
Yeah.
category. So just point that out, that's.
So unfortunately, when you look at that $12 million, that, I mean, it's still a tax bill. That's-
Right.
But that number included the debt service portion. So what that was is we added the $3 million in there to bring us to $8,374,022. So what our projected budget of actual expenditures. So that's your police, fire, all your salaries, everything that's subject to the levy limit.
With the increases.
Yeah, with all the increases. Comes out to $7,503,022. So that leaves us that cushion of $871,000. That's not being spent, but we have to levy for it. So what that is, it goes into this contingency amount. So it goes in there, we don't spend it, and then eventually it goes into your fund balance at the end of the year. So it's basically at the end of the year, it'll go into your fund balance. So I'll kind of explain how that goes there. And so in year 2026, again, our levy limit is the $8,374,000. This does not include, if net new construction is 0. So we would increase our operating budgets for actual expenditures by $217,715. So we still have to levy for $653 in that year. And then so on for 2027, it'd be the same thing. Our net is $8 million. We add another $217 in there. It reduces that number down, and by 28 and 29, as you can see, it gets down to 0. But each year, that money, that $871,653, it's going into your fund balance. So if you kind of go to the next area, this is beginning fund balance projection. So at 2025, our fund balance is going to be $1,695,221. But that $871,000, which is right above there, which is in contingency, will go into the fund balance. That makes us our fund balance $2,566,000. And your fund balance target is basically 20% of your expenditures. And the general fund expenditures, if you'd look on page, this all ties into page 5, our 2025 budget for expenditures are $9,641,740. Well, the 20%, 15 to 20% policy, we only need $1,928,348. So we're over our policy by $637,000. And in the future, so that number carries forward. So your fund balance for 2026 is the $2,566,000, which is the third column, goes to on 2025. And then you have, again, you're changing that fund balance at $653,000. It keeps on growing and growing. So the very last column, above, below 20% target, that's how much money is going into your fund balance that's going above that target. So the money's there, it's just, it just keeps on building for through 2029. And we're reducing each year by $217,750.
And that's based on, you figured like an approximate 3% increase
3%, expenditures going up about 5%.
in the budget each year.
We wouldn't need
Forward.
this if the state law would have said, okay, 2026, or we need 217,000, 27, 28, same each year, but we had to kind of build that into 1 year, and this is kind of the effect of it. So kind of talking to Alderwood, Mary, we're kind of looking at, really want to give this back to the community, because we don't want to be that far over our fund balance. So if you kind of look at 2025, there's $637 above that, so kind of what we're thinking is, well, what I was thinking of, was gonna propose for sure for 26, you take that overages and reduce your debt service, so you're reducing your taxes, and they're getting that money back, because we don't really need to hold that much money for that long.
Reducing the levy for debt service.
Reducing the levy for debt service, so there would be a tax decrease in the future years for a couple of years.
Reducing the levy for the tax service, not reducing.
So if you
the
would go to
amount
page,
owed.
so if you have your books, you would go to page 7.
I think you're just, it's just the, your question is like, just the vocabulary, right?
I don't
That's
know.
what you're asking.
No, it's your
Okay.
general debt service. If
Okay.
you wanted to, you just, because you don't want to use all the fund balance. You don't want to save all the fund balance. You basically, because the way the state made us do it, we had to collect extra money. So what we should do is probably reduce our fund balance and not build it up. And that way, we're technically giving it back to the citizens. So that just like general debt service, that are just for currently $4,070,818, you can reduce that number down, so that would reduce your property tax bill.
Down
You
to
take
like
that surplus.
3.6 million, maybe,
Yeah.
if you spent 400 of it. And what did you think that would, if we did 400, that would make a difference of about
Well,
$100?
Well, each
Yeah.
100,000 I looked at was about 24, 25
So that's $100 on the average.
on the
Yeah.
average.
Yeah.
I don't know if this all makes sense to anybody. It's a
It
lot.
certainly does to me,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is an unusual situation in terms of, because of the way we are restricted as municipalities, we're basically levying for that end year. That's what we have to do with that. So I think this lays out, I think, mechanically how it could work. You know, obviously, certainly I'll be the cautious one, and actually, Mark's usually more a little cautious than me on this one, but, you know, certainly, you know, keeping a little bit of extra fund balance is
Yeah.
probably a bad idea.
Right.
But I think that, but that's why I think Mark is saying, or Alderwood, I can't remember who said, you know, kind of split the difference that first year, or, you know, use that amount to get that back, so we still protecting ourselves for the uncertainty of a 4 or 5 year window that we're looking at. We certainly don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, we think we know what's gonna happen next year, but we really don't know what's gonna happen 3, 4, or 5 years from now. So giving ourselves, and obviously we'll be reviewing that every year we go through, but giving ourselves a little bit of wiggle room is probably a good idea. But yeah, absolutely, there's definitely an opportunity here, I think, to, I mean, not only, paying down the debt service has not only the immediate impact on the tax bill, it actually saves us interest costs
Yeah.
over time too, so it's kind of a twofer in terms of benefits.
Well,
and
no, it's
bonus.
not
Well,
gonna-
we'd be paying the same amount
Yeah.
It's the
anyway,
same amount. It's not
Yeah, it's not gonna change, it's not gonna,
change the interest
Yeah.
rates. We're not reducing. we're not
unless we
paying
paid
bond.
extra.
right.
Well, right.
Yeah.
It would reduce how much we all have to pay in taxes for debt service.
So, I mean, it's really the only way to kind of get around this whole state making you pay, borrow in advance. I mean, you can reduce them.
Thing is, we don't want to take that money and like make some new positions,
That's
because
what
we
you
aren't
kind
going
of
to
still
have
want to
money.
keep that in there.
Right.
You're
to
going to
fund
need
them going
217
forward.
reduced each year.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you take through 400,000, well, then you're already at your cap in a hurry. If you do 1 year, you just say, I'm just going to do 400,000.
And the state statute is not as specific as we advertised, which is, we said in all of our materials, as I indicated in emails, that we were setting aside, as per state law, we will set aside any excess.
Yeah, we
Refunding
are-
is not setting aside.
Which we are doing.
Yeah, I think in terms of, it is being separated out and designated, but again, in terms of actually versus the benefit, I think that the actual tax, there's that actual tax benefit. It doesn't, I mean, technically, if this council wanted to, you could spend everything right now. What we have intended, also, our intention is to
I understand
is
that.
to just
Yeah.
set that aside to the extent, you know, obviously as an undesignated thing, but it's undesignated until council designates it for something, which I think is what we're talking about in terms of an option of looking at using it for debt service.
So my point is that if we were to put any of it towards debt, it's okay by the state statute.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there an amount above which we are not allowed to keep in
our fund balance? Or is it just
We
best
set-
practices that you
We pretty much set our own
wouldn't?
fund balance percentage,
set a
right?
policy,
About
but you-
20 or something,
Yeah.
whatever I could recall.
You set a policy, and when you go out for, so we get our city's reviewed every year by Moody's or S&P, which are the
Mhm.
bond owners. And if you don't have a policy or you're following that policy, you get downgraded.
Right, right,
So
right,
that's- So you still want to have a healthy balance.
right.
I mean, you never know, some catastrophe could happen.
And this would still keep us even above our top
Right,
percentage.
that's what I'm, yeah.
It just seems like, I mean, these are big tax increases, and if we can save people $100
Yeah.
on their bill or more,
Sure.
it just seems to me like we ought to do that.
And still have enough for a rainy day for ourselves.
Because we wouldn't be spending all the 831, right?
No, no.
We'd still have more than 20% in our fund balance, which happens pretty frequently.
The long-term concern is definitely years 3 to 5. Absolutely, but again, it's balancing that with the ability to, either, you can certainly either just sit on it, or you said you can actually operationalize in this case and actually make a
Mhm.
short-term impact on.
Well, I think it's just, we have to be strict to our budget.
Mhm.
We can't
Yeah.
Which we've always planned on restricting our budgeting
We
to.
stick to that number and say, oh, we got this extra, we can't do that.
Well, we're not, once it's gone, so
Right.
it's not, so we couldn't extend past 29 if for some reason we went through the other.
Not
29
without
would
going
be-
to a new.
Well, I mean, we get the same.
We get the same
we
dollar
3
amount.
million, but yeah, by 29,
We're
inflation
thinking we'll need
will,
more probably, right?
or, yeah, the budget will have caught up with the 3 million.
If we're consistently
We-
budgeting the same.
Right,
Right.
but I think initially when we were talking about the set aside, we were talking about, well, because we will have some funds in beginning years,
Right.
that conceivably, if we had to, we could apply what we've been setting aside to 30 and 31.
Right.
And not have to go to referendum.
That's,
Correct.
And
yeah.
that's kind of where I was going.
Right.
And I think conceivably, we'll have a chance to talk about it more when we
Yeah.
actually have an amendment, but I could see conceivably, we might be able to use a sizable chunk to pay the debt service and still be able to set aside some for future years.
Yes.
Because we need like 217-ish,
Yeah.
well, whatever it is by the end.
Unless something
Uh,
outdoorsy happens. There's ways,
So-
that I think I said at the beginning on Tuesday, that I think we could, I think I mentioned we won't need another referendum for a while. I think we can budget wisely for the next.
And we also have net new construction coming in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's not gonna be a huge number, but yeah.
But that'll be,
Something.
And that'll help us so we don't have to use it either, so it's gonna be, yeah.
Yeah.
We won't see yet new construction for 3 years, though.
Right, but at the point we're done in 5 years, we'll
Sure.
have gained a fair amount.
Hopefully been something, right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I have to hope, the way the legislature is changing, and this is such a huge issue for so many municipalities,
Right.
they have to do something about this net
Mhm.
new construction law. Were there 70 municipalities went to referendum this year for operating, and
At least,
they never did that except to get extra public safety
Yeah.
positions before. It's,
I think it's still, a majority of them have been still for specific new investments they're looking at, but the number of folks who are looking at just an operating
Yeah.
referendum like we are, I think there's a lot of communities in Wisconsin that were watching us very closely to see how this went and exactly how this was structured, because this is gonna be, I think, more and more, even fast-growing communities, I think like Sun Prairie are looking at one.
Yeah.
Because their
well, Madison.
expenses are simply outpacing their revenue stream, so this is gonna be more and more common, so we're very fortunate to have gotten through it this time when we did, and to have the stability, hopefully, for the next several years to.
Well, can I just, if I might share what I was thinking, which Mary and Mark and Doug already know, which is, and again, I'm not, just another way to look at it. So, just for kicks, I looked what CDs, and I'm not saying that the city invests in CDs, but I looked at what the going CD rates are, and we could easily get over 4% in a very secure instrument, as opposed to paying off our debt, which would probably be 2 point something%, you know, because our average debt is 3.2, or even if it's 3%. So, I don't know, you know, my financial head always says, you know, which I think most investors would say, if you can, you know, that's what, you know, if it, you know, that's why, basically, that if you could make money by investing it, holding it, which is still setting it aside, as opposed to, you know, paying off, because it's not like the debt's not going to go back up again. We're constantly, every year, we're adding more debt. So it's not like 400,000 significantly reduces the debt.
Oh, we're not saying that,
It's
we're just
not.
saying it reduces the amount of taxes people have to
Right.
pay.
I know, but I'm just saying, you know, it doesn't really, so I'm just saying, you know,
Well, we could probably get 5% interest on it.
right.
And
If you get
our
5%.
average interest is 3.02% on the debt that we currently have. We can get 5% interest on that and then pay stuff off later or whatever. I mean, that seems to.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. I guess I kind of look at it as using a chunk of, a sizable enough chunk of fund balance that'll, you know, have a $100 a year impact, so taxes go up 600 instead of 700, is a way of acknowledging that it was a really close election, and there were, you know, obviously a lot of people not thrilled with their taxes going up that much. So,
Well, the other thing too is what's coming after this election. You know what I mean? After this federal election, what's coming?
I know.
What's gonna come down the road?
I know. I was thinking of that too. Like, I feel good about having something saved up for a rainy day.
No,
I
I mean,
feel like
We
we're,
still will have some.
okay,
we,
okay.
we do have CDs right now. We do
Okay.
invest in CDs. We do
What
for,
are they paying?
I have to take a look. I mean, I think one of them was 4.5. But that was, so like we have like water utilities, we have like sewer utilities. We have bond requirements, we have to set aside money there, so we do invest that. And like different instruments, we do in a general fund too. It's not all just sitting in one place. We do, so I mean, it's something we can, you know, there's ways around, put some in a CD and use some to pay off the debt. I mean,
Because we're talking 871,000, so if we took, say, 400 to help make the tax burden less, it still leaves us
Yeah.
471,000 to buy CDs with or whatever.
But
371.
it's, to me, it sends an odd message
Yeah.
in that, why did we ask for money that we're just gonna give back to them?
Right.
well, because of the way the state law is.
Made us.
State made us.
Well, let me
Yeah, I
finish.
mean, it's just,
In order for us to get to the 3 million in 29 number, we had to start with 3 million. So we had to ask for more than we knew weren't gonna need.
I
all
know,
that.
but
It does
it
send
sounds
an
to
odd-
me,
I
I mean, I look at it and say, well, why did they ask for $700 per residence when they could have asked for 600 per
Because of the law.
average?
Because the state made us. We
Yeah.
told people that.
I don't know that
They
they
probably
understood
didn't
it.
understand
Yeah,
it, but-
yeah.
It's complicated, and so I do think that it, for all intents and purposes, is going to require another education plan, because I don't think that a lot of residents understood.
The levy
No.
is staying, the operating levy is staying the same. We're not touching that.
Right.
It's the debt service, so that's
Right.
two different piles again.
Right.
But in reality, it's two.
Yeah.
Tax.
if you want to impact the tax bill, that's the side that
The overall tax.
we actually can make an impact on.
Yeah, because we're not
Is
going to
the-
drop
is the capital and the debt
operating
service.
levy.
We can't, we spent months trying to get our operating levy raised where we think we need it. We really, certainly want to keep that and maintain that. So, but if the side of the ledger where we can make a difference, if that's the way council wants to go, is definitely on the debt service side of it.
But you could reduce the need for the operating budget by reducing the total debt, by paying down the debt, not just using the money to pay the debt service.
No.
No?
Say that again? It's the same.
If you pay down the debt,
Yeah.
your debt service payments are less. Correct?
Yeah, it's just different words.
I think you're saying the same.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
There's two separate things, I know it's not.
Yeah.
You'd have to call a note, because there's a note, each year there's a separate payment. Because ours are callable, there's like certain, you can't call a lot of debt. Like if you borrow something, you can't call the debt until 8 years later. So it has to be within the callable dates
Oh.
to call that debt. So to get into.
But we pay a certain amount every year towards debt service, right?
Right, so that pays.
That's all structured by when these
Those years
loans are called, right?
Those years.
Okay.
But if you're looking at, say, a 5-year note, and you want to pay it off
Right.
earlier, is that what you're saying, like the future years?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
they would have to
Maybe
be
that's what I'm
callable at the time, and most of them are not callable.
Not callable.
But again, we're not talking about,
Like that's what he was getting, you're
yeah,
talking.
right. We're not talking about reducing the amount of debt. We're substituting this money to pay down so that the debt service levy, the amount we have to tax people for debt service will be less.
I get that. I understand.
So I mean, I do think that it sends kind of an odd message. I understand that we can explain it, but I think it does a couple of things. One is that I think it's said, you know, again, as Rick said, speaking, I'm trying to step back from being a city council member and think as being a resident. And if I get a bill that was $100, and it said right in the bill, you know, congratulations, you're not paying $731, you're only paying $631, and then it explained why I would, honestly, maybe it's just because I'm, you know, on social media too much, but I would think, wow, they really don't know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing, yep.
They really don't know what they're
That's the first thing
doing.
that I thought.
They didn't have the number right. And let me just finish. And then if I heard that there was I mean, then it's like, then we're keeping 371. We're not giving it all back. We're just giving part of it back. And then we're paying down the debt. And of course, the big rub that we hear from most people in town is we're in too much debt. So like,
But
and
that's
we
not-
said
I
this
mean,
was
that's
purely
inaccurate,
for
though.
operating.
I mean, we don't have too much debt.
I know we know, but that's not what residents think. There are a lot of residents that think that we have too much debt. At least that's what I see a lot on
I
social.
think the other side of that is people could say, oh, well, they could have lowered our taxes, the taxes that we owe by giving us some of this back. Why didn't they do that? You know,
Yeah, I guess,
you
That's
could
why
you
I'm
could look at
saying-
it either way.
yeah, I mean.
That's why we're discussing it, right?
Right.
I mean,
Like,
one issue with us keeping it all and investing it is like, so you're taxing me, you know, at the end of this year to fund stuff that's not gonna happen, you know, to set it aside for 5, 6, 7 years out in the future. I may not even, you know, be living here or anywhere for that matter. Philosophically, I guess, at some point, we shouldn't just hold on to the taxpayers' money if we don't really have a need for it and, you know, some kind of reasonable timeline. And to me, keeping that much for that long, you know, would be too much, but anyway.
It's food for thought.
Yeah.
Until we've got 2 weeks to make a decision, over 2 weeks, 2.5. But I just wanted to be sure, because I was confused about this, Neil was even confused about this. My original understanding when we talked about this a couple months ago was that we had to set this aside and save it for the 5th year, but that isn't the case.
Yeah, it's just a case of matter. We have this, we're not
It's-
gonna,
we
we're
have
not gonna
to-
use that 871 for operating expenses.
Right.
Because then you're gonna run that money up.
Right.
I mean, if we would have had the 871 in there, then we shouldn't have had the referendum, because we'd have to make cuts again the following year, because
Right.
we won't be able to fund what we just had. That's the issue we ran into, you know.
So, but, you know, I just wanted everybody to see this, so we all have we're all on the same page about how this works, because I think really, Doug, it was you who really brought it up, but
Mark.
you had some questions and talked to Mark, and yeah, so. I don't know, Neil, if you had anything else to add?
I would certainly just be, I mean, I guess I would take also present the idea of I guess I would be more concerned as a taxpayer, if like, so you tax me more so you could invest my money
Right.
for your own use, but instead of letting me keep that money and use
Yeah.
it for myself. Again, just as a.
Thought
as
about
a-
Totally
as a
understand that, but
Yeah.
then I would also say,
Yeah.
I totally understand, and I totally understand what Doug's saying, but then I guess I would also say, well, then, why aren't I getting it all back? Why are you only giving me 400,000 back instead of
Well, because we want to be responsible with it and keep a cushion. You know, we don't want to take it right down to 20% of the fund balance. So,
In part because of the federal government.
well, yeah.
And we've said since day one, this is a 5-year
Yeah.
project. So again, for the uncertainty
Yeah.
of dealing with those years going forward, it is responsible to be retaining some of that funds to apply for the unknown in terms of what could happen in the coming years. But,
Yeah.
so I think it's just finding the right balance. I think this is not an either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think there might be some ways of looking at both of those.
I think I certainly understand what you're saying, and I'm just, like I said, I think it's gonna be a communication challenge.
I guess one thing, Mark, the total tax regardless of all this stuff, the total tax is actually gonna be somewhat less, right, than we originally thought?
Yeah,
On the average for $435,000
That was-
home, isn't it 600?
that was in the
something?
budget, yeah.
696.
Yeah, I
Already
saw
instead
that.
of 736.
Well, that's because the debt service went down
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
200,000.
I mean, all these
Already.
numbers, when we tell people them are.
Estimates.
They're our best
What?
estimate at the
Yeah.
time, yeah.
Because the library's paid off and some other stuff.
Oh, wow.
That'd be great.
Where was that number? Which,
So,
The combination of the two could be powerful.
So the packet will go out tomorrow. I don't know if anybody will have budget amendments to go in the packet for Monday. Otherwise, if you want, we'll just hand them out that night for the first read, if you want. So
we won't be voting on them Monday anyway.
it's just a
so-
read-through on the first night.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
That's what I mean. So I assume
yeah.
if you want it, you just have them for Monday night, if you want them read in the first read.
Sorry, Mark, can you repeat that again? When do you need amendments by?
I think for tomorrow. What time's your packet going out? Probably if you haven't been by, what, 10 o'clock?
What?
So probably,
Probably Monday.
You can give them to on Monday.
You
and
give us to
hand
by
them Friday
Monday.
night.
We'll bring them that night. It's
or, I
probably-
mean, you can make them in between.
Yeah, we send them out.
Right.
The
Send them-
schedule's really tight this time,
Yeah.
so.
Because Leah does the packet, I know she has a lot of stuff going on tomorrow.
We'll be voting on them, what, on December 1st?
Yeah.
Or 2nd?
Second,
whatever?
yeah.
So if you have it, if we get them, we'll just send them out. If we get a bunch of them on Friday, we'll send them out on Friday, by PDF, not by packet, so.
So do we have anything else?
I think so, Mayor.
Are we all totally fried?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Boy, it seemed like we were really flipping along
I
there.
know, and then we just lost our
Yeah, because we were way ahead of schedule for a
I know,
while.
and then we
Just
got.
imagine